Welcome to the Kaiju Network podcast, where we have a very healthy obsession with kaiju. It's episode 130, our year-end Kaijupalooza podcast. I am your co-host, Kent, and with me is your other co-host,
Jason. How's it going, peeps?
Clark W. Griswold over there. But
Well,
it's
with it being just a little after Christmas, thought I'd just deck out my place here for a little bit. So it's a nice little change for once.
Yeah. And so we're streaming live on YouTube and I think Twitch and I think a couple other places. I'm on YouTube. So anybody who's joining or going to join throughout the course of our recording here, go ahead, join the conversation. There's a little chat box off to the side and there's a little bit of a delay. But we try to catch everything. But
yeah, I'm watching the chat room over here on Twitch, and of course we're also on Periscope and on DLive as well. So those are the only four live streaming platforms that we have going on for right now. Fortunately, we're not on Facebook Live as of yet, which with the streaming thing that we're on, it's like a pro pay bi-monthly thing. So as of right now, we can't do that for the time being right now. So those are the only four options.
So for anybody who has not listened in on any of our previous year-end podcasts, what the year-end podcast really is about in the past, what we've done is we've done like movie reviews, we've done CD reviews, we've done reviews of different things. It's really just a smorgasbord of just different topics, and we kind of go over the year in review, and we usually go back and revisit G-Fest in our conversations as well. It's really just a potpourri of everything kaiju.
Yeah, and we typically go through, like, for me last year, and I think probably you as well, that we do our top five certain things of that specific year, like film scores, maybe TV shows, and then also the things that we're looking forward to for the next year. So that's sort of the whole gesture for this whole Kaijupalooza, and as well, it's one of our longest episodes of the year.
Yeah, and for me, though, I would have to say this is the first time in a while in which I didn't have a ton going down. Part of it was because a couple of the things I wanted to cover weren't exactly they didn't pan out the way that I had hoped. Like, I wanted to cover the movies for Ultraman, Orb, and Geed, and I didn't realize until I started Geed that I really needed to go through the TV series before hitting the movie, because nothing in the story made sense. And so I still am going to talk a little bit about it because I did at least watch that whole movie. I'm not going to review it because I think it's unfair for me to do that until I've seen the whole series. But I still have some things that I want to talk about in terms of Mill Creek and the quality or lack thereof in certain cases, with not just that particular release, but the Orb release and some of their general Ultraman releases here over the last month or so since they started releasing those. So I have a few things to say about that, but so that kind of fell through the cracks. And then on top of that, I really couldn't find much in the way of anything else. I had another one or two topics, but I thought I'm going to save those for written posts on our website in kind of the future. So I'm not going to bother talking about those here. But there just wasn't a lot for me that I felt like I needed to visit or revisit. Yeah, I could have visited, like, I still don't think I've even covered like the Rampage score on here, and I have yet to, I think, even listen to it, period. So it's been kind of a weird holiday season for me. And all that. So I didn't cover a ton of ground this year, at least for this particular episode, but I have a few things up. And then depending upon what Jason has too, I'll probably chime in where necessary there as well.
Because go ahead.
Well, I was just getting going in terms of one of the things I wanted to do to kick off this podcast is that Kyle Yount has officially ended his Kaiju Cast podcast. He's been going strong for 10 years on that, and he's off doing more video related media now because that's kind of where he wants to go. And so just wanted to say, congratulations to Kyle. I don't know if he'll ever see this or hear it, but congratulations to Kyle on 10 years of podcasting. He was kind of the first official kaiju podcast on the block. We thought we were initially because we didn't find anybody. And then after I did some more digging, we found out Kyle beat us by like a year and 3 months.
Yeah.
So we're the second longest running kaiju podcast at this point. And of course, anybody who hasn't been around in recent years, we originally were Planet X Control Room. That was our podcast name for a while. And then due to
some
just being
family
busy
issues, internal issues,
we took like a year and a half off. So we kind of took a bit of a hiatus, and kind of during that time, other podcasts, started popping up. And but we're the second longest running kaiju podcast now. And if we keep podcasting, Jason, till at least April of 2021, we will then be the second longest running kaiju podcast. But for Kyle,
you mean the longest running?
Yeah, we will be the longest running. Yeah. But congratulations to Kyle once again. We had Kyle on here like 3-4 years ago when he just had returned like a month or two after doing filming for his documentary Hail to the King. You can find that episode in our archives on our website, daikaijunetwork.com. And listen to that. It was very informative. I was someone who had donated to that particular project of his. And, he introduced a lot of people to, people not just in front of the camera, but I think even more importantly, behind the camera. And he kind of helped bring some sort of access to people who had been longing for more access. I mean, there have been some books out there over the years, like Steve Rifle's book, David Callett's book, etc. But there have been periods where a lot of those books just were not readily available. And if you did find them, they were going for big sums of money. And it wasn't until I think a few years back, David Callett's book got a second edition, and that's become a little bit more readily available. I think Steve Rifle's book, I don't think it's all that readily available anymore, and I don't think it has been for quite some time. But he's brought on, obviously August Rigoni, Stuart Galbraith, so many people in front of and behind the camera for kaiju films, and kind of help give people their kaiju fix, and to kind of continue to help learn more about the genre that we all love. And so once again, congratulations to Kyle on 10 years of podcasting, and good luck in your next endeavor.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention about that because I put like a little note on my doc file here that his next venture is going to be called Collect All Monsters TV, and he's going to, I think some of the co-hosts are at least a few people that we've seen over at G-Fest.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget what one of the guys' face is, but I think he was a regular on Kaiju Cast. And then this one brunette gal, I think it's Christine or something of the sorts. I know she's been at G-Fest a couple of times.
Chapin.
Yeah. And then I think a few other people, and they're going to be, talking about collecting kaiju figurines. And seems like they travel to Japan from time to time as well, maybe doing other things besides collecting figures and as such. And they're actually going to be premiering that show today, surprisingly, on YouTube here. They're going to be doing a live stream and just kind of going over, introducing all the co-hosts for that new project that Kyle is a part of. So yeah, I would like to say congrats on 10 years podcasting over at Kaiju Cast. And I would also like to say good luck to Kyle and all those that are part of that new project going forward. And I think starting with this episode, as you can probably see on kind of the lower center there, our 10th anniversary logo. Of course, like what Kent said, that next year is going to be our 10th year podcasting as well, and our official 10 years of existence is right around early April. So we're going to be sort of celebrating throughout the entire year this year. I think we haven't really talked much about what our plans are for the next year and of such. I know we've talked about bringing on some of the familiar faces onto the podcast. So
Hello,
what do you got there?
Dino, Kaiju, and DK. We're doing well. We aren't actually doing any new podcasts. We were just talking about Kyle and how he's doing a new project from the Kaiju Cast.
Yep. And so for what I'm going to be planning on doing for this episode as well, like what Kent's going to be doing for his, I'm going to dive in a little bit. I finally got around to finishing up Johnny Sacco and the Giant Robot after probably about a year of trying to get around to finishing that up. And I just a little bit ago watched the first episode of Ultraman Taro just to kind of get my feet wet into that Ultra series, TV series, and just sort of get my first reaction and take on that show. And I'll be watching through it, and then once I get done with that one of these times, hopefully next year, give my official take on Ultraman Taro. And then, of course, I've got a list of my top 5 films and scores for this year, and then things I'll be looking forward to for next year.
Yeah. And again, on YouTube, Minecraft, Dino Kaiju, and anybody else who may be in the room, it appears like there's a severe delay. So like it seems like we're 2 or 3 minutes running behind on YouTube. So if it seems like we aren't getting any questions or comments that you're leaving, it's not because we don't see them. It's just because there is such a huge lag between us doing this live and when it actually shows up on YouTube. So I just kind of want to remind everybody. But yeah, you meant for this podcast being a new podcast. Also, thoughts on another decade being finished as well as another year. Well, technically, we're going into our 10th year. For us, we officially started in March of 2010. So officially, once we enter March, that's when we go into our 10th anniversary. And then our 11th year will begin March of 2021. So that's kind of what we're doing. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we're talking about. We've just been kind of bringing it up to people because it is kind of a big deal to us. Not a whole lot of podcasts last 10 years, and it's hard for me to believe we've been doing this for 10 years, actually.
Yeah, I can actually still remember our very first time, because I can remember I was living in like the studio apartment in just outside, well, just within inside of downtown Minneapolis there. And yeah, it was just with like an old Mac desktop computer, and I still actually have the microphone that I've been using for the last 10 years, but it's still going strong. But yeah, I think we've improved a lot over the years, as you can tell. Within about a year and a half, we've been going doing live streaming here, both on YouTube, and then we've expanded out to Periscope, D Live, and Twitch as well, and also sort of looking into expanding into other live streaming services within the next 1 to 2 years here. But yeah, we've been going fairly strong. I think fairly well since 2012, once we got back from our year and a half hiatus. Because I know when we started out, we used to been a weekly podcast right up until our hiatus.
And we did it weekly for like a couple of months, and then we were saying that's too much. So then we were doing it like every other week for a while, and then it just gradually just petered itself out is what happened. So yeah, congrats on the microphone lasting that long. My brother's Switch couldn't last that long. Oh man, that's too bad. I've had a Switch since June, and so far I've had nothing but good things to say about it. But I don't know. I don't know if those things are sensitive or not. But yeah, Jason's microphone. I'm kind of shocked he hasn't changed that out. I changed. Gosh, recently I've been through several microphones, but that's only because when I was trying to find a replacement. I bought a couple. They weren't the crappiest, but they weren't expensive either. So obviously you kind of get what you pay for. And so now finally I have 2 working microphones, including this headset, which I'm using for the first time. So far, hopefully both of these will last.
Yeah. And for a while. Speaking about the microphone that I've had for 10 years, I have been planning that once we get to our 10th year, that I've been looking into getting a new microphone and possibly handing this one to you. I've been looking at a little bit more of a professional type of a podcasting microphone, and as well as sort of get like a boom mic so I can at least have that microphone come up right to where I'm speaking right here. So then it at least would make it a little bit easier and the like. But that's a little bit a ways away. So nothing to worry about for the time being.
Yeah. But anyways, let's just kind of dive in. Let's just kind of dive into all this. We already congratulated Kyle. And did you want to go first with the topic, or did you want me to go first?
I think I can probably go with my topic, and I would say the first one I'm going to do with it fresh in my mind right now is my initial first reaction to Ultraman Taro, which I only just watched episode 1 just to get a feel of what's going on and what to sort of expect going forward watching this entire series. And my initial first reaction to Ultraman Taro is that it seems pretty interesting, and it seems to also be a little bit fast-paced, a little bit, and also one of the things that really caught my eye was the sort of very out there, ridiculous outfits that this, I don't know what you call, sort of monster patrol team, or I think they are like a space control command or whatever it is. It's called ZAT or ZAT. And they have this really huge sort of futuristic headquarters. It's just really out there. And some of their outfits, the way that they look, it's red, white, and blue colors. But the helmets are really the ones that stick out the most, is that they sort of look like a normal helmet with maybe a little bit of unique designs to them. But the one thing that stood out were these really huge sort of like arc fins on both sides of the helmet that they look like freaking ears in a way, like red fins. And it was just totally out
Now,
there,
when
but
was Taro released?
I'd say it would have to be somewhere around early to mid 70s
Interesting.
in
I
there.
don't know if I have that or not. I might.
I think you actually gave. I think you gave me that DVD that I've been that I
Oh,
started watching
I thought
to
it was a
me.
Leo that I gave you.
Nope, nope. But the vehicles in Ultraman Turo are pretty unique, but they also have some unique names like Panda, Eagle. I think it had like these animal names for some of these planes and vehicles. And
So is the panda very slothful?
no, it's I think it's like a van sort of looking vehicle, and it also has like some sort of defensive type of weapon where like there were two monsters in the first episode, and one of the monsters was that the lead role Kintaro, who becomes Ultraman Taro in the show. He finds like this flower plant seed from the desert, and he plants it sort of right along the banks of Tokyo Bay there. After he dives into the bay from the ship where he traveled in from.
Got a question
And
for you here.
what's that?
Minecraft Dino Kaiju asks, how does the series compare to the other Showa Kaiju films of the time, in your opinion? At least the first episode.
I would say with this one, it's for comparing this one with the, I think, previous three Ultraman shows, earlier Ultraman shows that I know and have seen. I would say this one seems to be a little bit more fast pacing. I'd say dives right into more of the action, a little bit quicker. I would say compared to Ultraman Leo, which I think goes right into that direction as well. And I would say at least this one where you get two of the baddie kaijus duking it out early on, and one of them defeating them. And I think, yeah, it's a little bit more fast paced for me compared. And I think you don't really dive right into some of these characters right away compared to some of the earlier shows that I can think of. I think that's sort of my opinion, is that it's fast paced. You don't dive right into some of these characters as of yet. You may a little bit with the lead role, obviously, but I hope that they lay the ground for some of these other characters that were introduced towards the end of the show. You get to obviously see them in the middle of the show. Yeah, so I think that is sort of my first reaction of Ultraman Taro episode 1, is that it is fast paced. It sort of lays the groundwork for introducing some of the characters in here. I would say gets into the kaiju battles pretty early. Yeah, and I hope that it sort of settles down a little bit, since there's at least 53 episodes in here, not very fast paced.
His follow-up question is, so does that make it better or worse than the Godzilla or Gamera films that also appeared around the same time?
From what I have seen during this time in the whole kaiju genre, that things were tend to start to going downhill a little bit as far as money and everything, and as far as quality. For me, the way that this show is somewhat started off in the way that it has presented itself. To me, to be honest, I think it looks a heck of a lot better in that sort of day and age when things were starting to go downhill for the whole kaiju and tokusatsu genre. And the reason was, I think I think of that is when one of the monsters was rampaging through the Ginza ward area, and they were showing some close-ups of the buildings and even the insides. A lot of the stuff were fairly detailed compared with some of the Godzilla and Gamera films at the time. They seemed to be sort of rushed a little bit due to low budget issues, and as well, one of the things too is that TV at the time was dominating the market at the time, so I can sort of see some of that quality within
So
the
in
Ultimate
terms
Horror.
of like, and let's do it in two categories. How do you think it compares with those films in terms of quality? And then also, how do you think it compares with those films in entertainment?
As far as entertainment, I think it has that potentiality to it, and so far with what episode 1 has delivered, I think it hit the mark on that as far as the entertainment value. With having two monsters going out with one another, and then the fast pacedness, I think, also helps in that area. And as far as the quality, like I mentioned earlier, showing some of the minute details in certain areas, even in the models as well, comparing that to models in films from Godzilla and Gamera, but as far as like the fast pacedness, it's not quite as good. It's sort of, I would say, it could be one of the weak parts of it, but with it being a 53 episode series, I hope that they sort of slow it down a bit and develop the story of that whole show, so then we can know what's going on. I know. Well, yeah. I think as far as the quality is, it's pretty good, with the fast pace maybe being a little bit of the weak part of the whole show.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So those are your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm going to move on to a topic that I want to talk about, and it in general has to do with all of the Mill Creek Entertainment Blu-ray releases of the Ultraman series and the Ultraman Orb and Geed series and films. This point, even though, like I said, I'm not covering the Geed and Orb films because I found out that I needed to watch those shows before watching the movies, and I didn't have time to do that in preparation for this podcast. There just wasn't enough time to go through all those shows and then to cover the films at the same time. But there is just this huge problem, and I talked about it with the Criterion Godzilla set here like a month ago, I believe. And I've shared on our Facebook page a couple of times, and I believe I've even brought it up here in other previous episodes as well, that white subtitles are the worst color you could use for subtitles. even though I still needed to watch the series to properly follow the film, I still find myself I still found myself lost watching Geed because I could not read a large majority of what was displayed on the screen with the subtitles. And on top of that, the subtitles were quite small as well. I mean, how difficult is it to change the subtitles to a color like yellow? I mean, classic media, when they had those films that they had licenses for, um, subtitle, they did them in yellow. And even small subtitles, even if they are colored yellow, would be more readable than larger white subtitles. Criterion and Mill Creek are the most recent offenders of using white subtitles. And Mill Creek, obviously, for anyone who's been paying attention, knows will be releasing more Ultraman titles in the coming year. In fact, I think Ultra 7 just came out within the last 2 or 3 weeks, if I'm
Mhm.
not mistaken. And I
Yeah, I
just
think
really
so.
hope word gets out to them to fix this for future releases because, as far as I'm concerned, using white subtitles for any movie or TV show makes those movies or shows unwatchable. There are fans who complain that dubs can make the dialogue incomplete and present the material in a hokey, ridiculous manner. And while that may be true, I can at least follow the movies and TV shows. If companies, though, like Criterion and Mill Creek, are going to continue this trend of using white subtitles, I'd rather spend extra money to add dubs to these movies and shows and pass those expenses along to us, the consumers, because at least that way it guarantees everyone will be able to follow those movies and shows. And I will take a goofy Heisei Godzilla style like dub over this white subtitle crap any day. And the actual disc holders for the Orb and Geed sets um, are lousy. They don't hold the disc in place well, which boggles my mind given the fact that their Ultraman and Ultra Q sets have better disc cases. And I don't understand this whole white subtitle thing. And you can go to our Facebook page. I posted this picture, I think it was like late last month or something like that. You can't read what's going on. And I have come to a point where I don't think, unless they fix this, I don't think I'm going to buy any of these future Mill Creek sets. I have uh, I have DVD-R copies of some of these earlier Ultraman shows, and they're subtitled in yellow. And that picture quality is actually pretty decent. It's not HD, but it's pretty darn good, actually. And I just Mill Creek and Criterion, I don't understand this idea of using wide subtitles. Anybody out there who deals with movies and shows and subtitles, you need to stop this. I can't read this crap because it blends in so well with the environment. I can't read the text. And I mean, am I alone in this? I mean, is there anybody out there listening to this that also has issues with white subtitles and being able to read them? Because I find it unwatchable. I bought the original Gojira Criterion DVD set, I believe it was like 2.5 years ago, because I wanted to see what some of the extras were like on it. And I heard the transfer was pretty darn good as well. So I wanted to check that out as well. And I just about turned it off after 10 minutes. I'm like, I can't read this crap. And I watched it through anyways just to kind of get a feel of what the movie was like. And I've said to myself, I said, outside of maybe going through and listening to a commentary track or seeing any extras on that set, I'm not revisiting that particular copy of that film, um, because I can't read the damn subtitles. And I can't be the only one out there. I would be very shocked if a majority of the people say I can read those white subtitles. And I don't know. I just we need to like let Mill Creek know that this is just unacceptable because, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, my money is wasted on these three sets that I bought. I bought the original Ultraman set again, which is my second Ultraman set. And then I bought the Orb and the Geed, and I just feel like my money. I would have been better throwing my money down the garbage disposal than buying these sets. It just because I can't really follow these films. I can't read the subtitles.
For me, with me being used to watching a lot of the anime with subtitles for years, I think a lot of the anime for me. Let me just hook this thing in. Most majority of the anime that I've been watching over the years, a lot of them have used white text, but a lot of them have like a thick, bold, black outline around the text to sort of make things more readable and easy to know that the text is there. And I think I've only ran into at least a few DVDs or Blu-rays that had the yellow text in there. I think it's just more of a preference, mainly for you. I think easier to read and everything on your end as far as the yellow text. For me, it can I can go either way. Sort of depends. For me, it's just sort of like it is it a distraction sort of thing where like when you try to read subtitles, like you're trying to read that and then try to look up at the picture at the same time there. So, in my preference, is the text going to be distracting? Am I going to be just looking at the lower part of the screen rather than not seeing the whole picture at the same time? So, there, I think it's just more of a preference.
And see, I'm even going on a Criterion forum here where people are debating like yellow or white subtitles. And people, strangely enough, are saying white because a lot of people say yellow is too gaudy. And I'm like, no, because white you can't read. Minecraft Dino says, so in other words, I can skip those DVDs from Mill Creek. Well, thanks for letting me know about that. So how was Christmas for both you and what did you get as gifts? I may be I may be late to ask, sorry. Um, you can, it depends. Like I don't want to say whether or not you should buy them. I just am saying for me, white subtitles are the worst. I can't I just can't read them. Like I said, there's a picture on our site that I took when I watched the Geed film, and almost half of that text in that one scene is cut off. I can't read that. And it's great that we finally have official copies of these films and shows. But I think maybe it depends on your eyesight. How sharp is it? I don't think my eyesight is really all that bad because obviously I'm not wearing glasses or contacts. But it just um, if there is a way for you to sort of stream them somewhere or borrow them from someone, I would do that before you make an investment. That would be my advice. Um, just because, again, I personally can't read them all that well. I can pick up things here and there, but that's because there's dark enough um, stuff, I guess, in the movies and the shows that help make the white subtitles pop. But in other parts or in other times, it's like, no, I can't see the stuff. Um, so that's what I would recommend is streaming them somewhere or checking them out. Also, maybe they need to make the black borders on the text thicker so that is better to read. Yeah, I mean, at the very least, even do that. I've seen that on some films too, and I think maybe even I have a couple of kaiju movies or two that do that, and that I can even read a lot better than the straight up white um, subtitles. So. I don't want to deter anybody from these, but at the same time, I personally find it a complete waste of money when you provide subtitles that are unreadable. And I truly do think these are unreadable. Apparently, I guess I'm oddly enough in the minority according to this Criterion forum that I'm just quickly scanning through here. Either that, or if there's a way these companies could do it, um, figure out like a little option in the DVD or Blu-ray features where you can choose the color of your subtitles. I think that would actually be more helpful because then you're giving more options. And I wouldn't think it would be that difficult to provide such an option on these discs. But yeah, I'm just about ready to go so far as to say I find it incredibly offensive that you put unreadable subtitles, on these discs because this stuff is not cheap, and I want to have these as part of my collection. But if you're gonna piss me off by saying, "Hey, you're not gonna be able to read this," I'm not going to continue buying this stuff. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it just sort of depends on if the text is going to be too distracting, maybe like really big or big with thick borders around the text, or if it's going to be like maybe small letters. It doesn't really matter for me. It just sort of depends on your preferences, and then maybe my suggestion, like sort of what Kent has mentioned, I would possibly say if you have a friend that's also into kaiju or tokusatsu, and if they have bought one of these new Ultraman DVD or Blu-ray copies, I would just maybe ask if you can borrow them and just sort of check them out yourself before investing, or if you're just one of those people that just needs to have it, then go right at it.
Yeah. And as far as what I got for Christmas, I got some T-shirts and tickets to an Elton John concert. That's what I got for Christmas.
Well, for me, I didn't really get much of anything, although with the exception, I can probably sort of count this as one of my Christmas gifts is that I just celebrated 5 years at my workplace, and I got a $150 gift card, which was surprising to me.
It's
And
pretty.
yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out what to do with it. And then right after I saw the new Star Wars movie here this last Friday of last week with some of my friends. One of my friends, he has a subscription to the Loot Crate thing, and a Skeletor long sleeve T-shirt was
Nice.
included in that, and he's not a huge fan of He-Man, but he knew that I was, so it was like he just gave it to me. It had like on the left side here, it had like the head Skeletor with sort of like it's like the skull and crossbones sort of thing, and then I think on the left sleeve it had his staff. It's like the design and everything was that 80s cartoon version of Skeletor, and it's just all purple. It's really neat.
Mm-hmm. I'm already, as you were talking, emailing Mill Creek Entertainment support at millcreekent.com about the subtitle issue. And I'm not joking when I say this. You got God of War 2018 for Christmas, which makes it your best PS4 game by far. I've never played those. I know Jason
I would
has.
have to say I did play through God of War, the most recent one that you got. I'm just going to say to you, you're going to really enjoy that game.
That's pretty cool. But yeah, look, I let me see. Can I share my screen here? Will it show up on here? My entire screen. Yes. Share. All right. Let me know. Can you see it?
What are you talking about? Oh yeah.
Right.
Actually,
Right here.
I don't think I would be able to says add scene. Um, I don't know if it will let me add it. Oh wait, it's got it.
Oh, well,
I won't be able to. I
all
would
right.
have to
Well,
make
then I will
another
stop
scene.
sharing.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I'm writing them an email as we talk.
but I just
this
saw.
has me so mad.
Yeah, I just saw it on the off screen over there. Yeah. You're
Support
ridiculous.
at millcreekent.com. Give them your thoughts and just be like, I can't read my diss. So yeah.
So with that, one of the things I did want to bring up, and there's been a few little inklings that have happened in the whole genre between our previous episode and now, is that we did get to see like a second like 1 second clip of the new Godzilla vs. Kong over at this Brazil Comic Con. And then we got to see the unveiling of the new Ultraman, Shin Ultraman, here just recently. I don't know if you saw that. I made a post of that on our Facebook page. If you've had the chance
I've seen
to
the
see it there.
Ultraman sculpt, yes.
So, what are your thoughts on that 1 second clip leak
I didn't
of
see the
Godzilla
clip.
vs. Kong?
I
Or the
didn't see
GIF or image or
the
whatever?
image. The image, it was pretty cool. I mean, they're on like a carrier, and
Supposedly a carrier, or it could be something else.
yeah, and yeah, it looked like Kong's getting ready to go in for a punch. This looks to be intense, and this is kind of what I want. I'm a little nervous, because it's like I want this movie, but at the same time, I don't want to see Godzilla die. But then at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, well, seeing a gorilla die too would probably look and make me feel pretty terrible as well. So yeah, I don't know, but Minecraft Dino Kaiju, I already do enjoy the game. In fact, I know what the story is from watching on YouTube, especially from Jack's Septic Eye, and it just makes
Oh yeah.
me more excited. It's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, like I'm excited for this movie. I think I'm gonna take my son to it when it comes out next year. He really, I think, wants to go and see a Godzilla film um, in theaters. Um, so yeah. Also, how is that Godzilla vs. Kong clip? And did you get claimed for copyright? Also, there is one YouTuber called Metho Kaiju that did his version of the clip. I have not seen that. I didn't see any sort of Godzilla Kong clip myself.
Well,
But
we
no, we
did.
didn't get claimed for copyright.
No, the only thing is that we did sort of Kent posted the like just a still clip of it, but then I had to take it down the next day because I had noticed that WB was sort of going around making the rounds and everything. So it was like, might as well just take it down and everything, so we just don't have to deal with any of that sort of issue. But I think many people have seen that already, or at least have seen maybe like fan iterations of the supposed leak, like drawings or 3D renders of that sort of famous bout with Khan about to ready punch Godzilla in the face there. But I did see sort of like the 1 second clip of it, and just see like maybe from the ground view of seeing Khan, like front view of Khan just kind of going in, and then you see like just that side afterwards, and then just goes on to a different clip and everything. It looks to be pretty promising so far. I was sort of hoping that it would like released right around my birthday, because my birthday is around that weekend. The movie that comes out, but I would say I'm sort of glad that it's getting delayed, so I can so that they can fine tune the movie more, and if they need any reshoots or the time to do other visual effects in that movie, I would say go right ahead, try to make the movie as best as you can.
Well, my understanding though too, and I've never really seen this director's films because I've heard from some people at this last G Fest when they were talking about this movie, they didn't have a whole lot of promise for him because I guess apparently many of his other films weren't all that great, and so a lot of people are kind of having low expectations going into this thing. I don't know. Like I said, I've never seen this guy's work before. Same thing with Michael Dougherty with King of the Monsters. I had never seen Krampus or Trick or Treat, which were two other films he's done. I don't care for those types of films, so obviously I've never watched them. So,
Because when I was subscribed to Netflix here, he did make a live action version of Death Note, which is a manga slash anime, and in my opinion, I think it was okay. I mean, there's going to be a lot of the directors out there, even some of the famous ones, may at times will have maybe some okay or not so great films, but then they'll probably have one of those chances that they'll have a one big hit and then maybe keep going. But like, I really do like Adam Wingard's palette, is like film palettes and everything. Like in Death Note, he did make things really colorful, like everything, like there's no different like specific shades or anything. Well, like in that one leaked image or video clip, like in that one scene, can be maybe like orange or something in the sorts, and then towards the end where they say that Hong Kong's going to be the third and final act, that it's going to be really colorful with what you've seen as far as the Hong Kong skyline. So you can definitely tell that he really goes for these bright, colorful palettes for the films and everything. And I think that's what he's going with. And a lot of people have sort of rumored that with the Hong Kong final act scene, that it could possibly be sort of like the Pacific Rim, where that's sort of colorful in a way.
hmm I mean, I obviously want it to be good. Preferably, I would like for it to follow in the same vein as the first Godzilla film by Gareth Edwards, because I really thought the storytelling and the just the filmmaking of that whole film was really top notch. I've always said I think that is one of the top two best filmed Godzilla movies ever. And Michael Dougherty, I thought he made, yes, a rather fun film, but I thought he pooped a little bit on kind of what Edwards brought to this particular trilogy in this kind of series, I guess, because it went from being something that had a lot of depth and soul to it to being a generic monster film, which isn't always bad. But I thought Edwards brought something more unique that hadn't really been done before with this character in the franchise. And I thought Doherty more or less ignored all of that and in some ways changed it to the detriment of this character of this series. And I'm afraid that trend is going to continue with Godzilla versus Kong. As if it's entertaining enough, yes, I'm along for the ride, but it's just I'm really afraid that this could continue to poo-poo kind of what Edwards initially brought to this trilogy.
Yeah, it's sort of what we mentioned about earlier when we reviewed and commentated on Godzilla King of the Monsters earlier, was that one of our main complaints, it wasn't too bad, but it was sort of trending along that trend, was that the film itself was sort of pandering in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's also one of the things that, like, your one of your favorite films, Shin Godzilla, was what mainly that film did.
It's like being under hypnosis. A certain word or phrase is said, and I just fall to sleep.
But at least with King of the Monsters, it didn't pander too much compared to Shin Godzilla.
Not too much. The oxygen destroyer bit, though, was the most severe offender of pandering because it wasn't set up and they just said oxygen destroyer. Oh my gosh, like longtime Godzilla fans sitting in their seats like this. It's just like it would have been better if you had set this up and maybe tried to use it like in the final battle or something to try to really up the stakes a little bit more. That whole part was terribly written. The more I watch the movie, the more I get viscerally upset at that whole oxygen destroyer bit, because I'm like, you could have done that so much better and you didn't, and it would have been a very easy fix. A fourth grader could have done a better job.
Yeah, yeah. In my opinion, I think they probably should have maybe built sort of a main story around that. Maybe have it linger on.
It should have been, yeah.
And then,
I mean,
and then also once it releases, and then there's possibly some sort of consequence, and then sort of given that pacifistic or sort of environmentalistic uh, opinion or feel and around the story for that after the consequence of unleashing the oxygen destroyer.
yeah, I mean, you could have had a real theme, a discussion with the human characters throughout the entire film. Like, yes, this will work, but is it worth unleashing the power of this weapon to kill, yes, these horrible monsters that unless we do something, will continue to wreak havoc on our planet and us, well, at least on us, the human race, some of them anyways, for generations to come. But if we do that, are we willing to suffer the severe consequences, which probably are worse, and for a while, with the oxygen destroyer, whereas the kaiju will continue to live on for as long as the Earth is around. So it would have been, you could have had a real interesting debate there throughout the entire film, and it would have been great to see how all that would have been played out.
Yeah, and it would have been nice that if they had parts of that post-credit scene, which I'm guessing a lot of people didn't attend or didn't stick around seeing that, or haven't
I'm sure
even
they've
bothered
seen
seeing
by
that.
now.
Yeah, well, at first, but it would have been nice to possibly had that part of the film instead of in the after the post credits. That a lot of the people in that one Mexican city off the shore there, that they were once fishermen and no longer can because of the effects of the oxygen destroyer. I wish that could have been like some of the main parts behind the oxygen destroyer story.
It's just a complete, and I like the movie, and I don't mean to like deep dive into this. In fact, this is, I think I have on my notes, going back and rediscussing, King of the Monsters, which I guess we're going ahead and doing that now. But yeah, I like the movie. I find it to be incredibly entertaining in many ways. But again, like I said, I loved what Gareth Edwards did from a storytelling and from a artistic point with the 2014 film, because it was something so different and so unique, which had never been done before with this character. And I thought, this is great. And I was so excited that he was initially slated to be the director for the second film until he wasn't. And Doherty knows Godzilla films but at the same time, he really just continued this whole idea of it's just giant monsters beating each other. And yes, there's a theme, environmentalism is a theme that sort of plays into this on some level, but it's never really explored in a lot of depth. Oxygen Destroyer is thrown in for no reason other than to make longtime Godzilla fans get all giddy in their seats. It's just Doherty made an entertaining film, but I don't think he made a good film. Um, Edwards made a good and entertaining film, and um, and and I've watched King of the Monsters, and like I said, I get a lot of fun with it, but then every time I realize this is a sequel to a film that is superior in just about every way, then I start to get angry. And I've never been this upset with a sequel to anything before. Like even with Pacific Rim Uprising. That's the sequel name, right? Or is that the name of the book I'm talking? Is it
Yeah,
Uprising?
yeah, it's Uprising.
Okay. I keep forgetting. I keep confusing the name of one of the novels with the film. Um, but yeah, like the second Pacific Rim movie in many respects is inferior to that first film, but I thought it still was more in line with that first movie on so many different levels than this film was with its first film. And I guess part of it too is because I am obviously more of a Godzilla fan than I am anything else, more than I am Gamera or Ultraman or anything else when it comes to like giant monsters and this sort of thing. In fact, Godzilla is like my, top three favorite fictional characters of all time. And I obviously hold this character near and dear, and I guess part of it is just me being overly protective of this character and its property, and I'm all for experimenting. But the thing is that this film I thought went too far off the deep end too soon. Whereas if you take a look at the Showa films, for example, it was a slow build up until the films got more wacky. It didn't just happen right like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
with Raids Again, I think some people probably would disagree with that, but Raids Again, especially if you watch the Japanese cut, is a very competent film and in many ways follows through on the events of Gojira. And same thing with the Heisei era. You start off with two tremendous films in Return of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Bylane. So you kind of had a little bit of, kind of a continuation there. But then that third film, King Ghidorah, really just goes off the deep end big time. And then things sort of kind of get back together a little bit more, starting with Godzilla versus Mothra all the way to the end with Destroya. But typically you kind of have sort of a slow burn, so to speak, before you start to see a lot of plot holes and other problems with the sequels. So it kind of frustrates me that Doherty just he made an entertaining, like I said, he made an entertaining Godzilla film, but it's not a good Godzilla film, he and I'm just going to go ahead and use the word, he crapped on a lot of the potential that was built up in that first film, and he just went into directions that were more about pandering and going back to the simple days of just monster versus monster, which again is not a bad thing, but the thing is we already have those movies. I would like to see something different, and we just really didn't get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, as I know, I mentioned about your favorite film. I know that obviously a lot of people out there, I think, have already seen the sculpture, the unveiling of Shin Ultraman.
Oh yeah, this is what we
And
were talking about.
and then one of the main differences that's obviously there and sort of the elephant in the room is that the time changer thing is non-present on this, and one of the reasons is for that is that in the original art concepts before the original Ultraman show began was that it didn't have that, but it was added on there later as for more as a like a budget for budget reasons in of the sorts. So what are your thoughts on the Shin Ultraman design and appearance?
The funny thing is that at least on first appearance, without actually seeing this particular version of Ultraman in action, I really think they did a better job of sticking to the original material than what they did with Shin Godzilla. But then again, though, too, as we found out, Shin Godzilla shot out lasers from his spines, his lower jaw opened up, and then his tail shot out a laser. I'm starting to. I don't trust these guys. I think I've even said it on here like a month or two ago when we brought up Shin Ultraman. I don't trust Hideaki Anno. I don't. I don't want him touching this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, he ruined Godzilla. Shin Godzilla is the biggest piece of crap that this Godzilla franchise has ever seen. And I know some people totally disagree with that, and that's fine. And they have strong views about it, but so do I. And I think Shin Godzilla is a literal giant piece of glowing poop. I mean, it just, you look at him, he's like a poop that an ember is burning inside. I mean, it really does. But the movie is awful on so many levels, and I will never forget these two college guys. They were walking and right in front of me, like 4 or 5 feet in front of me after the movie was over. We were leaving the theater, and the one guy looked over to his buddy and he goes, "Well, that sucked." And I thought to myself, yeah, it did. It just, and I remember sitting there in that theater watching this whole movie, and I'm going, I would rather watch GMK and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah 500 times consecutively than to watch this crap. This is the worst thing I've ever seen happen to this character. There's nothing redeemable about it. Not even the human characters are redeemable. There's no one to like in this movie. Everybody is a giant a-hole. And what they did to Godzilla is just beyond disastrous. It just, and when I heard this whole deal of him wanting to make Ultraman, I'm like, you better not let them do it. And then they let them do it. And I'm just like, this is crap. I am not going to see this thing. I will not see it. I will not endorse it. Anything done. I want these guys to never touch my beloved properties again. You are out. You are through. I don't want you touching it anymore because you ruined too much crap.
And then I know one of your arguments.
And I'll tell you what I really think.
Well, one of the things that you also mentioned about, and one of your other rants against Shin Godzilla, was that you also mentioned that it's really not a Godzilla film. It's mostly about the Japanese nationalism. In a way.
Exactly. Even Ed Gajuszewski confirmed this G-Fest last year. And anybody who was there, I mean, I wished I could have had this on video to show.
Was it this past G-Fest or was it G-Fest 2018? Okay.
Last year. Because he even talked about when he was talking to some of his Japanese friends about the film. He goes, he would ask him, did you see Shin Godzilla? Well, yeah. What'd you think of the Godzilla parts? And he was saying, one of these guys was like, huh, you know what? I forgot Godzilla was in it. Because it was a political movie that just happened to have Godzilla in it. It was so heavy on politics, and Godzilla was used as this, in a terrible way, just as
a like a small device.
Yeah, he was a contrived thing that had no personality, had no real point and purpose. You could have replaced Godzilla with a typhoon in the movie, and that would have served pretty much the same purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And you got my blood boiling now, Jason. Every time Shin Godzilla comes up, it's just like every single copy of that movie needs to be burned and forgotten. I've never felt this way about a film before, and I never thought I would. And I'm just like, holy crap, someone finally did it.
Well, now it seems like what you said, that you're not really gonna see Ultraman no matter
I'm
what,
not gonna
even
see it.
if you like it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna see it because what they did to Godzilla is on the verge of it really is unforgivable. I mean, it really is.
But I will plan on seeing the movie myself. Whoever distributes the film, which I'm guessing is going to be Funimation, like they did with Shin Godzilla. So looks like I'm going to be the only one that's going to give their take / opinion on the film whenever that comes out next year.
Let me say this, because you and I are on the same page about Shin Godzilla and what they did
Well,
to Shin Godzilla.
I'm not as like a rabid hater compared to you.
But you still dislike the movie, right?
I do, but not on the scale of like you are.
Okay, but nevertheless, for the most part, we're on the same page. I will hear what you have to say, and then if you like it, then I might give it a chance. Otherwise, no. Like, if they show it up here at one of the theaters, even for a one-night showing like they did with Shin Godzilla 3 years ago, I'm not going to go pay and see it. I'm not. I am not spending my money on something in which these guys have already taken a turd on something that I've loved dearly. So,
with that, who's going to be the one to continue on?
It's my turn here. So I broke down and bought the I double dipped and bought the Blu-ray version of the Ultraman series, and a lot of it is because I was very curious as to what this classic looked like in sort of HD. And remember, it's not true HD. It is in HD, but it's not true HD. And I just kind of wanted to see what it looked like, and I kind of wanted to see this booklet that came with it, and maybe any sort of other extras that came with it. And it's one of my all-time favorite TV shows, so that was another reason why I wanted to. I got very curious about it. And as I went through some of the first episodes, I wasn't surprised, but still angered by the presence of white subtitles. Yeah. But like I said, after watching the Geed movie, I knew what to expect going into the show. And as far as picture quality goes, the show is crisp and clean, but it must be stated, though, that the older DVD set of this show had great picture as well. And when comparing it to the DVD set, the Blu-ray set has the occasional moments where the color is richer, but for the most part, the differences are barely noticeable. I did find, however, some of the matte shots looked more like, well, matte shots on the Blu-ray than the DVDs. This goes back to when I watched Return of Godzilla on Blu-ray, and I realized there was one very obvious shot that I never realized was sort of a matte shot until I watched the Blu-ray edition of that film, and I'm just like, wow, that stands out like a sore thumb. The sound quality is where I noticed more of a consistent difference. The Blu-ray set had the richer, fuller sound quality. So I would recommend this particular. Would I recommend it? I think if you want a booklet that gives synopses of the episodes, the names of the kaiju, and a look at some of the tech used in the show, then this set is for you. If you're a completist, obviously you're going to be picking it up. But for someone who only wants to own one set, I would recommend picking up the older Mill Creek DVD set. The unfortunate thing about that is it's no longer in production, but it's still going at a cheaper price. And with that set, you'll also get the English dub, which is absent in this Blu-ray set.
Yeah, and I was fairly surprised that they didn't do that. Although with the older DVD set, especially the Ultraman, one is that you'll get a majority of it, but then there'll be some parts within those episodes where they didn't have the available English dub track, so then they had to
Yeah.
use like the original language with some of the subtitles until the English dub that they had available came back into play.
Which I thought when the first time I went through the series was kind of jarring. I'm like, wait a minute, did like my Blu-ray player like
That's what I thought
skip
so too at
audio?
first.
Like what happened here? And then I realized after it happened a few more times, I'm like, oh, because this was an old TV series in the US and I'm watching the dubbed version, that there probably were certain scenes that were
Yeah.
cut out either for time purposes or even for content. So
Yeah, so that'll be at least my only gripe with that. But other than that, it's still pretty good. But I haven't checked out like the latest versions of how those like the newest sets look in my eyes. But yeah, I would say at least check out the older version if you get your hands on that DVD set.
yeah, I mean, um, kind of like again when I talked about the Criterion Godzilla set, other than the fact that you get the Japanese version of King Kong versus Godzilla, there's no reason to really get this set. Unless, of course, again, if you're trying to find the classic media or TriStar DVDs, I know some of those not only have gotten harder to find, but are also really expensive if you do find them in some cases. So in that case, then yeah, go ahead and pick that set up.
Yeah,
But
it's like me because I don't have certain kinds of those Godzilla DVDs. Like for instance, Son of Godzilla, and then I don't think I have was it either Terror Mechagodzilla or Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, the '74 one. I think I at least don't have 2 or 3 of them. So for me, in my opinion, this would be at least a good set to complete the whole entire Showa era of the Godzilla films. Which for us, we already have the entire Heisei Millennium series completed.
yeah, and like I said, I you know, and let me just do a quick Amazon search because this was like an odd number of weeks back. But yeah, when I searched for Ultraman on there, the old old Mill Creek set, there were third party sellers selling that set, and they were selling it still at a cheaper price than what they were selling the new Blu-ray for retail. Let me quickly find it. Yeah. So I'm seeing 17 used and new offers. The cheapest price right now is $9.96
Yeah,
for that particular set.
and then it was sort of the same way for me too when I was starting to look into some of the like the Heisei Ultraman TV shows, starting out with Ultraman Tiga, which started that whole trend, which goes into today. That I started out with the first 2 Ultraman Tiga DVDs. They came in a set of 4. They like the first 2. They came in like the sort of box set which came with a T-shirt, and then I was able to get the fourth disc at a decent price. I think maybe $10 to $20, somewhere around that range. But the third disc was I would say the most pain in the ass to try to get, because like a lot of these third party sellers over at Amazon or anywhere else, like if you wanted to get the third disc of Ultraman Tiga, you would have to cough up between $200 to $300 just for one disc. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do that
with other shows. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass to deal with a lot of times.
And so at least this is a good way with Mill Creek Entertainment having access to the entire Ultra Series franchise library,
Hmm.
where we can finally have access to some of these shows that haven't even come over to the States yet or have been to the States, but it's just been many years since those shows were out of print from other manufacturers.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I, it's kind of interesting because, and I thought about it, a couple weeks ago when I was looking on Amazon for, that classic DVD set that both you and I own. And I thought, you know what? They probably don't produce that anymore because they got this new license and they're doing Blu-ray sets. So they probably, aren't producing that DVD set anymore. So I just, for curiosity's sake, went out and looked, and sure shooting, yeah, they aren't producing it anymore because Amazon is not selling it anymore. You can only get it from third-party sellers. And I would recommend anybody who is out there and has that set, don't get rid of it. I think it's still a very nice set because the only downside to that particular set is that occasionally the English dub is a little hard to understand in some moments, but by and large, it's still a really nice set. You get great menus. You have the complete episodes. The picture quality is really good. And you can still watch it in Japanese. It's just a question of, do you want it in high definition or not? And that's just that's something you really have to ask yourself: is it worth it? And um, I still remember buying that set. It was a little over 7 years ago. I bought that set. It was on Cyber Monday, and it was $4 on Amazon. And I'm just like, buy, 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 buy. Like, I'm just like, that's so ridiculously cheap. And I've gone through that series 3 times, and um, it's one of my favorite TV series of all time. And that, I've gotten more than $4 worth of use out of that thing in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So is it your turn or my turn?
It'll be my turn, and I'm just gonna give my take. Finally, my take on the whole Johnny Sacco and his flying robot series. It literally took
It's
me
about
a
time.
year. Yeah, it literally took me a year or over a year to finally get around and to actually finish this series up. And my initial reaction is that I think it's pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting show with unique characters, concepts, kaiju designs, battles in there, and it's 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 sort of it's like whenever I watch the show, it sort of reminds me of like kind of gets me in that mood when I'm watching either Spectre Man or Iron King. It sort of gets me back in
Kind of, yeah. It's sort
sort
of
of
in that same.
sort of gets me in that mood, or like Red Baron
Oh yeah,
or Red Baron. Um, and
Red Baron.
and it's just a really unique show. My only gripe is that it would have been nice if I think it was Toei that
Totally
did
did
this.
this.
Yeah, Toei did when they did the show. I wish they would have hoped to at least possibly cleaned it up a little bit, or at, was it American Films when they carried the show, and then it would have been nice to. I think it was Shout Factory that carried this when they converted it. I was hoping that they would have cleaned it up a little bit better as far as picture quality, because it was a bit grainy and picture quality wasn't too great. The audio quality isn't quite as good. There were at times where you couldn't understand as much what they're talking about, even in the English dubs. But at least that entire show had the entire English dub track available.
Yeah.
Whereas the Ultraman TV show, the DVD set that we were just talking about a minute ago, where there were some instances with some of these scenes that the English dub
Well,
track
and they
wasn't
don't last
available.
that long. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, but yeah, there were at times where you couldn't understand what they were talking about, and some of the backgrounds were a bit dated, but other than that, the visual effects for the time for this TV show were pretty good. And I really enjoyed the battle scenes, the characters, the fast pacedness of the show. I think it suits it fairly well. And I like the villains and the main villain.
Fangar. Fangar is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a really interesting show. I'm not sure if that TV show is still in print from Shout Factory. If so, it'll probably be at a fairly cheap price. If not, it may still be at a cheap price, but the price might go up. You can probably check it out if it's still in production. There, Kent.
That's what I'm trying to do.
But it's a fairly interesting show. Really good concept. If you've seen Red Baron, some of these other like giant robot kaiju battle TV shows.
Amazon's still selling it. It's $28 there, and getting ready to go to Shout Factory. I think they're still selling it here too. They're selling it for $30. Oh, wait a minute. No, yeah, they are. They're selling it for $30.
I think I got it for cheaper at Amazon at the time. It seems like the price has gone up a bit.
It's gone up quite a bit. Yeah, like I bought this over 5 years ago. Amazon says I bought it on my wedding anniversary 5 years ago. I don't know what I paid, and I'm not going to go through my history to find out but yeah, I thought I paid like maybe $15-20 for it.
Yeah, I think I did too for that a couple or so years ago when I finally gotten around to getting that film or TV show. But yeah, it's if you haven't gotten around to seeing Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, I would suggest checking that out definitely. I think Shout Factory has their own app on Roku and possibly Amazon Fire TV. Yeah, they do have their own app on Roku, at least that I know of. And I think they might have that show on there for free or could be paid. I'll have to check that out. But if you're definitely interested in seeing Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, I would suggest checking out either on Shout Factory's Roku app. And if it's free, I would suggest checking it out. And if you are interested in possibly getting a physical copy of it, I would suggest doing so too.
I would suggest buying it anyways, because it is a very unique show. And I remember talking about it on here, because I didn't watch it until, gosh, when was the first time I watched it? I think it was 2015.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
2016 was the first time I watched it, because I bought it. I have a Godzilla pen. I forgot about that. Anyway,
right in front of your face. You just finally noticed.
I forgot about it. For anybody who, I don't remember where I got that.
Is that the 2014 Godzilla?
It is, yeah.
For a second, I thought looked like it could have been the 98 Godzilla.
Yeah, Huh. That kind of makes me happy. But but anyway, yeah, I think because I bought it in 2014, I think I was a little hesitant, kind of like with Matango. I remember when I bought that, I'm like, I'm glad I got this, but I'm like I held off for 3 or so months because I'm like, this sounds like it'd be pretty ridiculous. And then I finally watched it, and it's like one of my favorite Toho type films ever. This one was something that I'm like, okay, it seems kind of goofy and wacky. I don't know much about it, but I've heard of it before, and it does seem like, yeah, it can kind of get a little silly, and so I was a little hesitant on wanting to check it out. And then I think it took me like 2 years to finally sit. No, no, it didn't, because I did watch it in. Oh no, I'm trying to remember. I've watched the series twice. I've watched it twice. I think the last time I actually watched it, the second time I watched it was 2016. That was the second time I watched it because I got it done in like 4 days. And the first time I watched it, gosh, I don't remember. I think I watched it before my son was born, actually. So yeah, I take that back. I actually watched, I think, within the first couple of weeks of getting it because he was born in early December. And so I watched it, I think, within the first couple weeks after I got it in 2014. And then I watched it a second time here 3 years ago now. And I haven't gone back to see it again yet because I've like, look at all this, and there's a bunch of other stuff you can't really see here. I've got 9 seasons of Perry Mason hidden up here that you can't see. Um, and so I'm trying to work through a bunch of other movies and TV shows.
Looks like someone needs to do a little bit of spring cleaning.
I do spring cleaning 4 or 5 times a year, but it's just hard for me to get rid of movies and TV shows. But yeah, I keep going back and watching the same shows: 66 Batman, Twilight Zone, and Ultraman, and it's like, you've got like other TV shows you got to watch here. It's just like, yeah, I know, but I like these other ones more. But anyway, um, Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. Look, if you love like the Showa Godzilla films, let's say more than you do the newer films like the 80s, 90s, and the current ones, and you like the more practical effects and you like some of the cheesiness of some of the stories and some of the effects and all that stuff as well, Johnny Sacco and the Flying Robot, I guarantee you, is something you will love. And that's one of the reasons why I love it. That's one of the reasons why I love the original Ultraman, why I love the Showa Godzilla era a little bit more than I do the other eras. Because there's something to be said about the charm and hokiness of cheesy practical effects, cheesy storylines, cheesy characters, all that fun stuff. Because it takes me back to being a kid again, because when you're a kid, you don't understand much of the world and you don't understand what makes a good story. You don't understand plots. You don't understand plot holes, all that fun stuff. And, it just takes me back to a time of innocence as a kid where you just let your stuff run wild. Hey, my He-Man's going to fight Optimus Prime, and Optimus Prime's going to team up over here with Elmo. And, like, you develop all these weird, wacky ideas that work in your mind. And that, to me, is what a lot of these older movies and TV shows are about. They're so ridiculous that I love them. Yeah, they're not maybe from a story sense the best things ever, but they're so much fun. So
I got one challenge for you here.
uh,
As far as Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, how would you compare that show uh, between that, Iron King, and Red Baron?
which out of three, which one would I watch more, or like?
Uh, like how does it compare as far as the quality? Um, maybe quality and oh
Quality, like like the worksmanship, the craftsmanship.
That, and then as far, I would say story as well.
As far as quality, like craftsmanship and all that, basically like effects work, um, I think it's better than those other two shows, Iron King and Red Baron. Red Baron has a lot of deserty looking locations most of the time. Iron King has a lot of rural, tree lined, which are still difficult to make a lot of times, but it's still simpler than building a bunch of miniature buildings. But Johnny Sacco, you're gonna see a little bit more miniature work than you are in those other two. Iron King, occasionally, when they did do miniature work, was pretty darn impressive. Same thing with Red Baron. The thing is, you don't see it as often in those. And Red Baron, I think, was a 39 episode series. And Iron King, like Johnny Sacco, is a 26 episode series. So I think as far as like craftsmanship and like how many different effects that you see, Johnny Sacco is definitely superior in that department. Um, as far and what was the other one?
Story.
Story goes. All three of them follow a linear story. They tell one big complete story. It's for some people it depends as far as how you get involved with the characters. Um, I have to say I enjoyed all three of them for different reasons. Johnny Sacco I like because you're kind of following a secret organization. I really liked Johnny, and I liked his more adult type sidekick. There was something kind of like a big brother little brother relationship going on there. With Iron King, I liked it because it was very comedic most of the time, and I liked a lot of the comedy, even though it was really goofy and silly most of the time. But I thought it worked well. Um, and then with Red Baron, it took really dark turns at times, especially towards the end, with several characters getting killed. Um, and it kind of that particular one had sort of a nice, heartwarming ending to it because they had sort of an in memoriam of a couple of the characters that had died over the course of that show. Um, I think it just really depends on the individual, but for me personally, um, I guess which one did I enjoy most? Um, all three of them were good in their own ways, but the one, and I've been thinking about going back and revisiting Red Baron because I've wrapped that thing up over 5 years ago, even I think close
Yeah,
to 5.5 years ago now.
yeah, I think that
Um,
was the last time we actually reviewed that show when we did the Toku Zone
yeah,
segment for this podcast.
yeah, and we should almost bring that back because
Well,
there's a lot of stuff now.
I did actually mention about that, but I think we talked a little bit about possibly not doing like episode by episode
Yeah,
talk that we
let's
did.
actually think about bringing that back. And then just redoing it as far as how we approach like how many episodes we watch and then discuss. But for me
Yeah.
personally, the out of those three, the one I still always think about a little bit more is Johnny Sacco because there's just something really charming about it that I just really got attached to. And again, that's not to say I didn't like Iron King or Red Baron. I really did, but Johnny Sacco just was something different, and it just sort of pulled me in, I guess, a little bit more um, initially, anyways, and just kind of kept me there. Whereas Red Baron and Iron King, especially Iron King, I remember was really hard for me to get into at first because I'm like, what is this? It just was the weirdest thing And I just really thought it was some sort of terrible joke for a while. And I'm going, why is this show the way that it is? But once I sat down and stayed with it longer, the more I realized there is a lot to really like here. But Johnny Sacco is the one I always think about most between those three.
So you would prefer seeing Johnny Sacco overall over those other two shows that were mentioned?
I would have to say this, okay, to try to, because I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm about to say. I recommend everybody seeing all three of those shows. I think all three of those shows are worth watching. All three of them provide something different and unique that the other ones don't. Again, it really depends on one's personal preference. But for me, if someone came up to me and said, "Okay, I have only a limited amount of money, and I can either buy Red Baron or Iron King or Johnny Sacco, which one would I buy or should I buy?" And I would say, for me, I would recommend Johnny Sacco. You know, but still, in the big scheme of things, I think everybody should see all those shows because I think they're fun. They're fun in their own way because each show is so unique and
Mm-hmm.
different. It's not like watching, gosh, what are like a couple of shows or something that are very similar to
Spectre
one
Man?
another. I've never seen Spectre Man, so I can't comment. But
You haven't? I thought you've. Don't you have a set of that?
I do, but I haven't seen it yet.
You got to
Um,
get around to seeing that,
I
boy.
know there's a lot of things. Like I got like a bunch of stuff up here. um, but God, I'm trying to think. Like I can't think of anything off the top of my head where like two TV shows are like
I know one
very
TV.
similar to
I
another.
know one TV show I was thinking about doing before uh, us doing this episode, since we had more than a month to prepare, but I just didn't have the time to get around to it. I was hoping to at least get into Jumborg Ace, which I purchased that
Oh yeah,
set just this past G Fest, but I know that probably would have been sort of a similar setup, possibly a similar story or linear story in a way, but just sort of just seeing how it looks and everything. But as far as how it's going to go, that's just only speculation at this
yeah.
point in time. So,
All right, so on to my review of Godzilla Aftershock, the prequel graphic novel to Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla Aftershock follows in that tradition of prequel material that provides something to pique and maintain fan interest until a film's arrival. Typically, such material provides little, if any, background or build up to the actual movie in question. With Godzilla Aftershock, readers are treated to a story that gives them, so to speak, the Queen of the Mutos and Muto Prime, or Jinshin Mushi, and it's also called as it's called in the graphic novel. Here, Dr. Emma Russell, along with a couple of other folks, traipse around parts of the globe trying to understand any patterns by the Muto Prime. Along the way, Alan Jonah makes his appearance as well as a younger Maddie and Mark. On top of all that, ancient Japanese tablets talk about the generational struggle between Godzilla and this Muto Prime. Everything concludes in Montana when Dr. Russell uses a very crude version of an instrument that we will all realize is the Orca to bring the Muto Prime to the surface. It battles with Godzilla until Godzilla ultimately squashes its head. Does the graphic novel shed any more light on the 2014 film or the sequel? Absolutely not. Hold on, I gotta scroll here. It doesn't even add anything more to the character of Dr. Emma Russell or anyone else who shows up here and the movie itself. It's similar to Godzilla Awakening in that it doesn't build up to anything with the movie it's tied in with. However, with Awakening, we can actually understand a bit more about the Muto and its ancient struggles with Godzilla. Here we get nothing that adds to the 2014 movie nor to King of the Monsters. Arvid Nelson, the writer of the graphic novel, creates a story that is mildly entertaining but again does nothing to help further explain story elements of the previous film nor the film that succeeds it. It's simply a vehicle to bring Dr. Emma Russell into the light considering her major role in King of the Monsters. The most disappointing aspect is that no buildup is brought about between her and Jonah that would further help to explain her teaming up with Jonah in King of the Monsters. Such an incredible opportunity to shed some light on this critical story point isn't even given a thought, and that's just bad. The illustrations by Drew Edward Johnson are the highlights of this so graphic novel. His drawings really capture the likeness of familiar characters, including Godzilla, and also do justice to ancient tablet drawings that uh, that that are whoa, I forgot a word that are scattered throughout the graphic novel. Johnson does the material justice and knows exactly what he's dealing with. The kaiju battles are wonderfully done and are the highlights of the story. Without them, this graphic novel would be utter garbage. As it stands, Godzilla Aftershock only delivers a mild entertainment value while adding absolutely nothing of value to the 2014 and 2019 films. It's only a buy if you're a real big-time Godzilla collector. Otherwise, it's worth skipping.
So really not worth getting, huh?
Not really. I mean, I'm not a big comic reader to begin with, and I own a fair amount of just sort of comics in general. I mean, I've owned some of the IDW stuff that and some of which I've covered here over the years, and I own like some other comics and stuff too, like superhero comics, some of which I've read. But even then, like I've purchased a ton of like digital comics, and a lot of them are still sitting on my Kindle Fire that I haven't touched. So I just am not a huge comic reader to begin with. But like I said, I wasn't head over heels about it. I just kind of was like, it's here, and that's about it. So
yeah, probably not as good as the Half Century War, which I know I reviewed that many years ago when that was out and about.
I
from
still
IDW.
remember reading Gangsters and Goliaths and reviewing that for this podcast.
That just seems so weird.
It was weird, but it was also just downright bad because I'm just like I'm like, okay, I'm all for doing things different, but this is so different that it's bad.
Yeah, it's like when I first saw like the cover to issue 1 and then seeing the title of that, I was like, I don't know. It just seems to be something that just came out of nowhere without any warning whatsoever. So it's like, I'm just going to stick with like the original one and then some of the others, and even like some of those short mini series comics like Half Century War, which to me, in my opinion,
hey, Godzilla Productions TV
is Half Century War is by far for me the best Godzilla comic out there.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Merry Christmas or late Christmas.
Yeah. So your turn to go.
Well, I know I don't really have anything as far as review, so I'm just going to.
Well, then wait a minute here. I think I do, and then I might be going into a list of things. Is that what you have next? Or lists?
Yeah, basically,
okay.
Like I was going to start out my top 5 films for this year.
Okay. After this one more graphic novel, then yeah, I have a list of kaiju films and then the year in review.
Yeah, because I would, although it would be nice to review the Godzilla, the latest Godzilla mobile game. Godzilla, was it Defense Force? But I was going to actually say that for more as a written review exclusively over at the DaikajuNetwork.com, but I just need to get around to doing that.
Yeah, sorry, Godzilla Productions TV. Like the lag is really bad today. It's like 2 or 3 minutes behind. Like, yeah. So it's not that we don't see your stuff. It's just it takes really long for it to show up on the actual feed.
Yeah, it's like I know Twitch is fairly good because it doesn't lag too far behind, which I know I'm monitoring that chat room side. So
yeah. So why don't let me do one more review here, and then we can get into our list.
Be my guest.
All right, so now I'm going to review another graphic novel, Skull Island: The Birth of Kong. Before writing before writing Godzilla Aftershock, writer Arvid Nelson wrote Skull Island: The Birth of Kong. The story takes place in 1996 when the son of Houston Brooks, Aaron, takes a team to Skull Island to investigate the Mutos on the island. What follows obviously is chaos and death, and a little bit of background on our favorite giant gorilla as well. Nelson has written a story that ties into the graphic novel's original source material better than Aftershock. The story brings in elements that were brought up in Skull Island, as well as answering some questions that were posed in that movie, such as what happened to Kong's parents. The story is fast paced and filled with a lot of action. Aaron Brooks is a hothead, although his exact motivations for actually going to Skull Island are fuzzy. Is he going there to try to eradicate any Mutos? Is he wanting to do a field study of the fauna on the island and report it back to civilization? The answer seems to be more of the latter, but that's not clear. Regardless, Nelson and the illustrator Zid create an emotional story that had me on the verge of tears at times. Those moments, as you might have guessed, involved the history of the island, which inhabited a whole race of Kongs, and Kong's own personal story. I guess Zid deserves a little bit more credit as he's the no as he's the only let me start that whole sentence again. I guess Zid deserves a little bit more credit as he's the one really, no pun intended, painting the actual picture of the horror and death that befell Kong's race and his parents. It's incredible, heartbreaking, and gut-wrenching, not to mention incredibly bloody. The characters, creatures, and environments are beautifully illustrated and realize so much to the point I began to wonder if Zid may have even pasted photographs into his work to help create all of it. The story is well told and complements the Skull Island movie really well. I enjoyed how Aaron's voice recording is sprinkled throughout the story, telling his dad about his experience on Skull Island. One final question I had, though, is what are we to make of the ending? Aaron ends up staying on Skull Island to help the Iwi rebuild their village, and he, tongue in cheek, tells his dad to come looking for him. So Houston decides to look for his son on Skull Island as the book comes to a close. I understand this was written probably before the King of the Monsters story was finished, but now that we've seen Houston in King of the Monsters, are we to assume he traveled to Skull Island and found his son dead or alive? We don't know. Yes, I understand that these prequel and interquel stories aren't necessarily part of the actual universe of the material in which they're based, but I can't help but to wonder this. One of the things I loved most about the book is a pictorial appendix that talks about some of the floral, fauna, and landscapes of Skull Island. It not only helps the reader with the graphic novel, but also helps with the movie as well. Skull Island: The Birth of Kong is a moving story that provides more background information on Kong and the world in which he habits. It's an action packed adventure with some fun creatures and beautifully illustrated history of the island and Kong's kin. The graphic novel is something I can't recommend highly enough.
Awesome.
So, I mean, that one, uh, uh, they
Yep.
are sort of canon. Yeah, I know they sort of are. Um, the thing is that it just, like I said, the ending to this particular story raises just questions about Houston because of the fact he actually goes looking for his son, and we see him in King of the Monsters, and all that. So yeah, enjoy your lunch. um, but um, but yeah, I just there are questions to be raised.
Yeah,
About that.
I know I've seen several pictures of that graphic novel here and there, even on YouTube from other YouTubers out there. That it seems pretty interesting to look into. For me, I just haven't. It's like I haven't really gotten into any of the like kaiju related comic books for I think the last few so years since I
Here's the
last
thing, though.
reviewed it.
If you are looking if you're trying to figure out, again, we're going back to like the whole Johnny Sacco again. If you're looking to purchase either Godzilla Awakening, Godzilla Aftershock, or Kong, I would buy Kong. It is just, I mean, it's something else. It's especially when you get into the history of Skull Island and Kong. And like I said, I was nearly moved to tears on several occasions. I mean, it is not just a well-told story; it is a very sad story as well. I mean, it's not only told well, but more than anything else, because it's a comic, which means the pictures matter an awful lot. Zid's artwork in this really captures the violence and the heartache on this island, especially in its history. I can't recommend this highly enough. This is like I said, Godzilla Awakening I have not revisited in over 5 years. Godzilla Aftershock I don't intend on revisiting again anytime soon either. I am more than willing, even right now when we get off this podcast, I'm more willing to reread, Skull Island Birth of Kong. I mean, it is a really really good story. It's something, and it's like $12 I think on Amazon, which is where I got it. So
that's not too bad.
I recommend it.
All right, so going on to our top lists for this year. Guess I'll be starting that off here, and if I can bring that up here, I'm going to start off.
I'm glad you loved Aftershock. I don't know if you got in on my review on it here like 5 or so minutes ago. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for Aftershock all that much. Aftershock is one of those that, I mean, I'm glad I got it because I love Godzilla, but I don't see myself reading it again anytime soon. But anyway, sorry, Jason.
Yeah, geez. First, I want to start off with my top 5 kaiju films of 2019 here, and I'm going to start off with number 5, and that one's going to be Kong Skull Island. As a matter of fact,
yeah.
that to me, that film, in my opinion, is probably one of the better, if not the best Kong movie thus far, in my opinion. At least I would say, at least it's in the top 3. There, it's just a really good Kong film. It sort of goes in the slight direction of kind of going like the original way of telling the story, but then adding its own twists, its own story plots and everything, and adding some new creatures into this whole world and universe, and making Kong much more bigger, vicious. I would say not quite as vicious, but also sort of friendlier towards the two main casts of Kong Skull Island there. And I just really liked how that whole entire movie was set up, as far as the storytelling, the characters, the visual effects, like the whole entire island, how that looks. It just looks amazing. I also liked the design of Kong himself, and as well as the skull crawlers in that movie. I just really liked how that movie went for that. And so on to my number 4 top kaiju film for this year is Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. And this film, for me, this is the film that I probably watched the most this entire year, because I know we were supposed to review it for one of the episodes.
You kept watching it like for a period of time, thinking, "Wait a minute, I thought we were cutting." No, dude, like follow the schedule. This isn't that hard to follow. Well, I thought we were doing Space Godzilla. Well, we should make a shirt of that. I thought I was watching Space Godzilla.
Well, and then we watched, and then I had to watch it again from when we were actually gonna be doing the review. But but it it's like I know I got into it. It's like Space Godzilla is one of my favorite, one of my I would say top 5 favorite Godzilla villains out there. Just by the design of that character, the certain powers that he has, how he was brought into the entire Godzilla franchise, and the like. And I think just over the years, it's sort of gone up and down. But I think recently, while seeing this twice, I think the movie is sort of kind of got me hooked onto it just by the sheer charm of the movie and some of the characters. Some of them are pretty goofy, and I think that's sort of what makes the film for me a bit. I also like the story, how it was set up and everything, and then some of the visual effects. Some instances of that film have sort of been dated now, but some of them have kept up pretty well for these last 25 years. That film has been around. I also like the battles. It seems like I think this is probably one of the longest battles in the entire Heisei series.
In the entire franchise, really.
Yeah, in the entire franchise. And it's just a really good, entertaining film for me in that sort of aspect.
So you watched King of the Monsters most, probably 15 times once you got on DVD, and watched it 6 times in one day once. Man, I can't, I love, like, Rocky 4 is my all-time favorite film. I don't think I could even watch that 6 times in one day. 2, maybe 3 times, but
yeah,
man, good on you, because that's a 2-hour film. That's an over 2-hour film. 6 times. You spent like 14, 15 hours one day. What'd you do? Put that thing on repeat? Wow. Well, good on you. Man, that's a really long day. I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I don't think I could do that, though.
So my number 3 top kaiju film for 2019 would definitely have to be Godzilla vs. Destroya. And also, again, here, this is one of those films. It has a really good story in it. Probably one of the better stories in the Godzilla franchise. And also, I think everyone can't argue that the Destroya design is probably one of the better ones. For me, in my opinion, probably the top 5 best character designs in the entire franchise there. And the visual effects in this film compared to Godzilla vs. Destroya, to me, I think it has kept up fairly well. Even with the death scene of Godzilla there, even though it was covered in clouds and smoke and everything, to me that's still has kept up fairly well. And I even like the detail and how they did the practical effect to how Godzilla melts down at the end there. It's just a phenomenal job in how they did that. And it's such a good movie. And for those of you that have still not seen that, definitely check Godzilla vs. Destroya there. So my number 2 top kaiju film for this year is Godzilla the Planet Eater, the final film of
the anime Godzilla.
of the anime Godzilla. It's it's a really good, interesting take. I know we've mentioned about this when we reviewed the entire anime trilogy. It's a really interesting take on the whole entire Godzilla universe, and the way how like the choice of doing the 3D anime style for this trilogy. It makes it really good. The story of it throughout the entire trilogy, and even concluding it with Godzilla the Planet Eater, it's just phenomenal. I've really enjoyed the characters, how they developed throughout the three films, and then the very end, and even the take on Ghidorah, making him as a dimensional being where he can't hardly be touched and everything. It's a really unique take on the Ghidorah character and everything in general. The entire Godzilla franchise. It's for me. It's a fresh breath of air sort of thing. It's sort of nice to get to see something different for once instead
And it's
of
not
rehashing
like
the same thing
different.
over and over.
It's not the difference like Shin Godzilla where it's different and it disrespects the material.
Yeah. So obviously, you can probably tell my number one kaiju film
No, I can't because there are a bunch of them out there.
for this year. It's Godzilla
Let
King of the
me.
Monsters.
Oh, I was gonna try to take a guess.
But I know we talked about this earlier with some of its downsides to it.
Yeah,
But you can't argue it's a pretty good addition to the Godzilla franchise.
it's fun. It's entertaining. I love the American, but this is the first time in which an American company produced a Godzilla film that I've actually been on some level decently disappointed in for certain reasons.
Yeah, but as far as the kaiju designs besides Godzilla, the designs for Ghidorah, Rodan, Mothra,
Fabulous.
they're spectacular. They have their own personality to them. How they battle each other. It was sort of unique in how some of these other monsters reacted to towards one another, and it was sort of nice to see them actually be in an Americanized Godzilla film for once, because all we've seen is just Godzilla himself in another made up monster that just isn't part of the entire Godzilla franchise up until now, recently with the Mutos there. But it's a really good popcorn film, and if you're one of those people that enjoy kaiju battles throughout the entire film, this is definitely your movie. It's a really good film. I would say it falls short in some of the story plots here and there, like we talked about earlier about this film. It's a really good. It's a good movie nonetheless. I would just hoped that there could have been a little bit more depth to it in some areas, but other than that, it's a good movie, good storyline, great visual effects, spectacular designs on the other kaiju, and looking forward to what's going to come up next.
All right. Well, unlike you, my list isn't in any particular order. I have, let's see,
For
4,
shame.
5, 6, 7. I have 8 films that, in no particular order, are sort of my favorites of the year. One of my favorites for the year is the 2014 Godzilla. We did this in a commentary odd number of months back, and I think I even watched it again earlier in the year. And I really do enjoy the 2014 film. I think the 2014 film, like we talked about a little while ago in this podcast, I think is The storytelling is done marvelously well. The cinematography is so unique that a Godzilla film has not been filmed like that before up until that point. And I love the fact that it was a slow build up for the entire reveal of Godzilla. And the more I watch that movie, the more entertained I am by it, and the more I begin to seriously realize that the acting in that movie is superb on pretty much every level. So 2014 it makes my list. The next movie that I really enjoyed an awful lot this year was, and this may not come as a surprise to anybody, but the '98 film. I watched this a couple of times.
Shocker.
I think the last time I watched it was back in like early September. And this movie, once again, just it came out at a very big time for me, and really for a lot of people. But I'm one of the handful of people that it made a huge impression on me. I had been a Godzilla fan for about 6 years at that point, and I loved it. I loved the new design, and I just really. Um, I just I love the design. I love the story behind it. Um, I f- it's just a really fun, entertaining film, in my opinion. It's one that I think is one of the most underappreciated films of the entire franchise. Another film I have on here, and this one I put on here mainly because my son Lincoln has watched this so much this year, and it's more of an appreciation for this movie because um, I really um, it's sort of helped solidify even further my son's love of the genre. And anybody who's been a longtime listener knows that I don't care too much for this movie. But the movie that I'm talking about in question is Destroy All Monsters. My son has asked to watch that movie many times over the last 4 or 5 months. And he just really enjoys that film an awful lot. And I envy him because he's seen it at a very impressionable age. You and I saw it when we were teens, and I think in some ways, sadly, some of that childhood magic sort of wore off on us a little bit by that point, where certain things didn't wow us as much as they would have if we had seen this movie, like when we were within our first year or two of being fans. Because I was 8 when I first became a fan. You were 6, so and we didn't get to see this movie until 6 years later. So we kind of
Yeah.
missed out on that period where just certain things can kind of really wow you in quite a bit, at least more frequently, anyways. But my son really loves Destroy All Monsters. For him, at least this year, it's been his 3 movies. I can tell you, his 3 favorite movies are Destroy All Monsters, Rampage, and The New King of the Monsters. Those would be his top 3. Um, but yeah, I put Destroy All Monsters on here because it's really helped solidify my son into becoming an even bigger monster nut than he already is.
Yeah.
Um, the next movie I have on here is the 2019 King of the Monsters. I mean, despite the fact that in some respects this movie disappointed me, and I envy you, Godzilla Productions. You saw it at an impressionable age too. I was 13 when I saw it. Um, but King of the Monsters, despite its faults, it is a very entertaining film. It is deeply flawed in so many areas that it saddens and yet angers me at the same time. Um, but because I thought Gareth Edwards set everything up so nicely, um, um, for this whole monster verse, and I still feel like Michael Dougherty on some levels just kind of spat all over that, and I think it's unfortunate. But I really think, though, regardless, he made an entertaining film. It is a fun movie to watch. There is a lot happening. There isn't the kaiju aren't on screen as much as I think people would like. There's only 3 extra minutes of kaiju action here when compared to the 2014 film. So the difference is not huge. But it still is an entertaining film. I really do enjoy it. I have seen it, including when it was in theaters. I've seen it probably 6 or 7 times at least this year, and it is a fun film. I really do enjoy it, but it is a deeply flawed film. Um, the next film I have on here is Rampage. I've seen this movie a couple of times this year, and including times in which my son asked to see it. Um, and um, um, stop put the deleted scenes back in King of the Monsters, stop cutting away from the battles, and boom, it's perfect. Exactly. A lot of what I thought was crazy with some of the fan base was that they praise this movie up and King of the Monsters, that is up and down, as being the Godzilla movie. And I told people, I said, it's really in terms of how it's portrayed the Godzilla action, not that different from 2014. And everybody, like 50% of the fandom didn't care for that film. And I'm like, this film, in terms of how it handled the kaiju action, is really no different from the 2014 film. So, but yeah, but Rampage, rediscovering that again several times this year, I'm so blown away at this simple video game movie and how well the story is told, the fact that it is done right, it is done seriously in terms of with respect to the material and trying to make a good, fun story out of it. I still am just really blown away by how good that movie really is. And some people,
Yeah.
I think, sadly dismiss it. They just think it's a generic giant monster movie, and I'm like, not really. There is a deeper sense to it. Will we ever get a sequel? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But
I I think
I,
I might have read something. I don't know. I'll have to check that. But yeah, it's like I know our end of year episode last year. I know that that was our surprising like best film for that year and how good that was. Even the story, the characters, just how everything just panned out for that movie. It was just really good in how they accomplished
yeah.
in making that film.
It really is something else, and I kind of get a little frustrated by people who said it was a skippable type of film, and I'm like, it's actually um, it's one of the better, in my opinion, it's one of the best giant monster movies in recent years. It's so well done, and like I think I even said when we talked about it last year, I said it's better than what we deserved because I wasn't expecting much. I was excited about it, yes, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like giant monsters and all that, but I wasn't thinking that it was going to be much of anything. And I thought, look, as long as you deliver the Rampage, hey, I'll go see it, even if it's a movie that gets like 2% on Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. But it turned out to be just so awesome. Detective Pikachu, best video game movie ever. I never saw Detective Pikachu, so I really can't comment on that.
Yeah, same here. I
listened
haven't gotten
to
around to seeing it.
I've listened to some reviews on certain movie podcasts I listen to, and it seems like it might be a movie I might like, but I don't know if I would fall in love with it.
I would say the one video game movie I'm definitely looking forward to, and I think it comes out next year or 2021, the Mortal Kombat reboot.
Oh wow, I forgot about that.
And they just actually wrapped the principal photography of that just not too long ago. So
You think Pacific Rim is the best kaiju movie of the decade? Pacific Rim is definitely up there for me. I really do like that first movie an awful lot. I would say for me, best kaiju movie of the decade. That is tough. I would say I'm torn between two movies, and I'll tell you what they are. Um, I'm torn between um, I'm torn between the 2014 film and Rampage. I'm even going to put Skull Island in there too, because Skull Island really, I think, is a lot better than people say it is. I would have to say for me, best kaiju film of the decade. Boy, that's tough. You know what? I'm going to say all three are tied. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat and say all three.
well, it's like I know for me, I would have decided between either the 2014 or Rampage, because for me, Rampage is a surprising
Right. I mean,
kaiju or like giant monster film.
it did a sneak attack on everyone.
It just came out of left field there. It was just really good, and to me, it's just really up there. But as far as just the one best film of the decade for me, I'd probably still go with the 2014 Godzilla. Just, I would say barely, just barely.
Yeah,
And that's how good Rampage is. It's really up there.
Rampage is just spectacular. The next movie I have on my list, Godzilla Raids Again. Saw it, I think, 3 times this year. I saw the American version twice, and I saw the Japanese version once. And again, I'm still blown away by that particular film. And this is a movie that I'm hoping to write a post about starting in the next year, because I'm hoping to do more writing on the site. But it's such an important film because it introduces the giant monster. Uh, uh, monster versus monster battle in there. And a lot of people I know over the years have been upset that the big battle takes place a half hour into the movie. But I keep reminding people, I go, first of all, you have to remember a couple things. One thing is, this is the very first film in which they started doing that. There was no sort of stereotypical formula. So first of all, you have to cut them some slack because they were just new to this. Second of all, the movie still is technically about Godzilla because it's called Godzilla's Counterattack. Anguirus was just technically thrown in there to just be fodder to show how powerful Godzilla actually is. And Godzilla Raids Again, I love its formula. I love the fact that its format is so different from many of the other kaiju films. And I love the characters. I'm so invested in their stories as well. Masaru Sato's score is wonderful as well. Can be crazy, but I would call you crazy, but I would put King of the Monsters up there because it gave me everything I wanted to see in a Godzilla movie. That's great. When I was little, there's so much I wanted to put in a Godzilla movie, and King of the Monsters pretty much had it all. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you enjoy it. Like I said, I think it's entertaining, but I think there's a lot that's wrong with it, and I think it kind of poo-poos on a lot of what Gareth Edwards did that helps, I think, set things up, and it just kind of was ignored and disrespected, I think, in many regards. But yeah, Godzilla Raids Again. I think is another film that really is overlooked. My next film, Kong Skull Island, once again, a film that doesn't get as much love as it deserves. It was kind of big time when it came out in theaters. What was it, March of 2017?
Yeah.
And then kind of once it escaped theaters, that was kind of it. You didn't really hear a whole lot about it afterwards, even in the kaiju community. It just sort of disappeared, and I think that's unfortunate because
even though it's the most grossing film of the MonsterVerse.
That's true. I keep forgetting that it is. I mean, Kong Skull Island is a beautiful film. It's not necessarily my favorite Kong movie. My favorite Kong movie, I think, still might be that 2005 version. But this is right up there. This is definitely a terrific Kong film. It's a great retelling of that particular story. So yeah, I got Kong Skull Island, and then my final film is the Godzilla anime trilogy. I'm just including the whole trilogy because it's one big story. It's not parts. Um, Again, kind of like what you said, um, with the anime, it brought in a lot of stuff that was new and different. And I do like the fact that, new and different is a good thing if it's done right. And I think the anime definitely was done right. And the anime really put a whole unique spin, just like the MonsterVerse. Um, the MonsterVerse really brought in some new elements that had never been seen before in the franchise, and the anime certainly did the same thing. And with respect to the material, and I really love that about the anime and the fact that Toho, after coming off of Shin Godzilla with characters that were just insufferable, finally gave us characters that were worth rooting for as well. And I love the whole story. I love the I love everything that they did with that anime. I love the designs of the kaiju. I love the unique take on Mecha Godzilla, the unique take of King Ghidorah, as well. It was a fantastically done trilogy that I have already revisited again, since even G Fest. It's in my opinion, if the Godzilla anime, I'm always clumping into one movie because it is just one story. It's not like
Mm.
Rocky 2, Rocky 3, where it's like separate stories, even though they are in a sense separate stories, but it's one long tale with the anime trilogy. And the anime trilogy, in my opinion, and I sat down and thought about this a little while ago after that third film came out, and I was kind of just in general ranking my favorite or what I thought were the best Godzilla movies of all time, and the anime trilogy made it in the top three. I
Oh
really
wow.
think this is, and I was trying to be very unbiased about it because I really thought this trilogy really brought a lot of fun, unique things that still respected the source material so much and told a wonderful human story. So the Godzilla anime has to go on there too. The only difference between King of the Monsters and my fantasies was I had Orochi over Ghidorah and would have had a crap ton more monsters. Yeah, I think a lot of us as kids, I still remember when I was a kid playing with my toys and all that, thinking the dream movie, and this is before I even saw Destroy All Monsters, was, having a film where it's just a ton of monsters and it's just a giant free for all. So,
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm going to move on to bring my note up here. Top five scores of 2019. And I'm going to start out my number five, and it's going to be the Ultraman anime that's currently on
I
Netflix
almost,
right now.
I actually did forget about that for a while. I actually did. I'm like, oh, that's right. There was an Ultraman anime. I only saw the first one or two episodes.
Yeah, I think you mentioned. I think we did. I know I did a review on it, and I think you did a little bit of your take on the first two episodes there. But with that said, the score to the anime I thought was pretty good for that sort of world as it is just beginning, trying to build up the characters uh, in that world. There, it's I really like the score to that show. It's been a while since I've seen that show, so I probably don't quite know how much things were used uh, for that show, but I know it was pretty good for that particular show in and of itself. So with that, my number four for top five scores of 2019 is Kong Skull Island, and I would say that it's one of the better, if not the best score in the entire MonsterVerse. It's one of those tracks that you can listen to over and over again, whereas the 2014 score, although it's really good when it's in the film, but actually listening to that whole original soundtrack by itself, for me, I would say I would listen to it once every once every while. It's one of those scores I don't like. I can't find the specific word for that, but yeah, it's one of those sort of forgettable types of tracks. The 2014 Godzilla, but when it comes to Kong Skull Island, it's one of those soundtracks that you can listen to frequently. It's a really good soundtrack.
Godzilla Productions has a warning for you. If King of the Monsters isn't number one, he will lose all respect for you. He's laughing. He listens to it almost every day.
So, so my number three score for 2019 is Rampage. And that's another score that is really good that you can listen to over and over again. It's just really spectacular, and I think it's the same guy that does was it San Andreas, which I think the same director that directed this film. And I just liked how I forget the guy's name, but I liked how he scored for this film. Oh man, it's just so good. If none of you haven't listened to the Rampage soundtrack by itself, I would suggest checking that out, and you can definitely see how that score really fits the film well. So my number two is Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. And I really like the score to this one, how it combines, some of these similar, like familiar Godzilla tracks or scores from back in the day, and then spicing them up a little bit, even with some like sort of that space type of feel to the whole film. And I also liked the Space Godzilla theme in there, and like the whole title sequence. I also liked the score called Crystal, which is used towards the end of the film. It's really good, somber. It's like it's somber at first, but then it sort of picks up from there, sort of towards the end. It's sort of like that kind of the love theme for Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. It's a really good soundtrack. I would suggest checking that out if you haven't done so. So my number one top score for 2019, Godzilla King of the Monsters. So I didn't want to say anything for that. So yeah, I would say with Bear McQuarrie, who also did the scoring for the new God of War video game. he's brought in to do the Godzilla King of the Monsters score. And I really liked how he redid the famous Godzilla theme by Akira Fukube, and then bringing in some of his own unique takes for the film. I really enjoyed like some of the other details and how he made his own vision and print on some of these other scores, even the new take of the Godzilla theme. It's really good. It's another track that you can listen to by itself. It's a really good soundtrack in its own. Up there with Kong Skull Island. I would. It's really good. Suggest checking it out if you haven't done so. So those are my top 5 kaiju scores of 2019.
All right. I'm just going to do a quick year in review on things. And then my final segment is hopes for next year. But what I'm going to do for the year in review is just kind of touch upon some highlights. Of this year, just kind of give a quick couple of comments and, kind of, I'm not going to linger too much. Some of this stuff we have talked about before. One of the first thing I have on here actually is the Godzilla King of the Monsters movie. Since we've already talked about that quite a bit already throughout this podcast, I'm not going to revisit that. My next thing is G-Fest 26. I had a lot of fun there, despite there being a lot of the same things, more or less, kind of over the 8 years you and I have been attending.
Yeah, it's sort of starting to feel almost the same stuff over and over again.
I still stand by, though, one particular panel being really dreadful in this year's G-Fest. You can just go back and re-listen to our post G-Fest podcast on that. I'm not going to go really any further into that, and that it just was really the worst panel I've ever experienced. I may be a bit harsh on the con as a whole, but I still think there should be some changes that occur on occasion every few years to kind of keep things fresh. I was once seriously contemplating on not going next year, but I am now anxiously looking forward to going again, and I may even bring my son next year. And I may even continue going for a while even after next year. So I know I've kind of done some rethinking on G-Fest. Let's see. I just love pretty much every song on the track to death. My number one hope for next year, Bear comes back for the Godzilla vs. Kong soundtrack. That would be nice. We will have to wait and see as far as what happens there. But yeah, like I think I was a little. I've gone back and I've kind of rethought a little bit of what I've said about G-Fest this year. And yeah, I think, is the sun really kind of like, it's making me look weird here. Let me.
Yeah, it's sort of a little bit too bright on your skin there.
Let me close the blinds here. Thank God this cord is long enough.
Yeah, it's sort of getting in the way a bit. There you go.
All right.
Much better.
Now you can see my ugliness.
What else is new?
But anyways, I think I was a little harsh on the con, but at the same time, I think, kind of how that old saying goes, familiarity breeds contempt. I'm not in contempt of the con, but it's just that we've been going long enough to where there's not I can't, it's hard for me to get excited for it anymore, and that's just unfortunate because that just comes with the territory when you attend something like a convention every year. Because like your first couple of times are always going to be magical because it's brand new for you. It's kind of like if you were to go to Disney World the first couple of times. You go to Disney World the first couple of times, I'm sure it's probably like the greatest thing in the world, although maybe not for me because I don't like crowds. But then like when you start going the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, it probably starts to get a little old because you become very familiar with everything and all that. So um, it's just kind of one of those things when you get very familiar with something, it kind of loses its charm after a while, sadly, and there's nothing you can really do
Yeah.
about it. Because even if you were to, let's say, not go for an odd number of years, next time you do come back, yeah, it might seem still kind of unique because you've been out of it for X amount of years, but then again, maybe not because you still have fresh memories of going for a while. So the magic of the first couple of times you go to something like this, sadly, can never be sort of, um, I guess, re-experienced, which is unfortunate.
Yeah,
But
and that was also one of the things I've listed down. My things to look forward to for next year is the next G Fest, because I originally was thinking of possibly not going this time.
it sounded like there for a while you like were almost 100% not going.
Yeah, but then after thinking about it for some time, and then also the other reason for me of now going was that the reservation for the
Yeah, that
hotel.
more or less is kind of what sealed the deal for you.
Yeah, it pretty much did, because there was really no way of transferring that reservation to your name, more or less. There there probably is a way, but with me, I did it through online, and I think it's a little bit easier to just try to edit your reservation and stuff. But if I tried to cancel mine and then had can't do it, it would have to be fairly quick, because you may never know that someone might have all of a sudden just taken that spot right when I
Yeah.
canceled it. So then it's like it was too risky of a move to try to do something like that. So then I was like, I might as well go for another year, because then I'm thinking about maybe taking at least a year or two off from GFest after this one here, and then plus it is going to be sort of a unique GFest next year, because of Kent potentially bring his son over
Yeah.
for the very first time, and then having him experiencing it for his first time.
Yeah, so that would be interesting. Part of me is
Yeah,
also kind of wondering how much is he going to enjoy it because I know there are a couple places he would enjoy an awful lot, which like the dealer's room I think is going to be the number one thing.
yeah. The number
And just
one.
after that, like the panels I think are going to bore him is my fear, but
Yeah, I probably would say, obviously the dealer's room, and then I probably would say one of the next things would be the dojo studio room, where you see some of the models. I don't know what they're going to be doing for next year, but it seems like the last couple of years they haven't really done much as far as like doing
well, that's like
filming.
4 years they haven't really done anything.
Uh, and yeah, I hope that they do something in there next year as far as filming and doing some stuff for it, because then that would make things even better for Lincoln to see for himself. And then I think one of the other things that he would like to see would be the costume parade.
You almost fainted when you first walked in the dealer's room. I still remember that. Yeah, the very first time we went, I'm just like, I was like Walter Matthau when he walked into Aunt Margaret's house. I was like, "Holy moly! Look at all the crap you got." I mean, sorry, stuff. I mean, it's just, it's amazing.
Hmm.
Still, I mean, I'm still amazed at just how much stuff is in there. But because over the years, my collecting has become more downsized. I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff, and I also only focus on a few areas. The dealer's room
Yeah.
still impresses me, but not obviously, again, not to the degree that it used to. But anyways, moving on to my year in review. The next thing is the Criterion Godzilla collection. Again, a really nice set, but not a ton to offer fans who are able to purchase the Showa films back in the mid to late 2000s, with the exception of the Japanese cut of King Kong versus Godzilla. As I watched some of the films, oddly enough, I found myself being excited about the genre again, despite having felt inundated over the previous months, and helping with my anticipation of next year's G Fest. The HD is pretty decent on those films, but a lot of times it's tough to see that much of a difference between those films and the earlier releases on DVD. Supplemental material outside, again, of the Japanese cut of King Kong versus Godzilla isn't anything special. And great set for those who missed out on some of the earlier classic media and TriStar DVD releases. Um, and then the Godzilla anime. The Godzilla anime concluded earlier this year, and kind of like what I talked about, 10 or so minutes ago, the Godzilla anime, I think, is truly one of the best stories told within this franchise. I think, again, I think a lot of people are seriously missing the mark, and I don't mean to insult people when I say this, but I think maybe this trilogy is even a little too deep for some people within the fandom as well. And the thing is that look, if you're looking for monster versus monsters, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for that sort of typical smash 'em up stuff all the time, there are a ton of those movies out there already, and this provides something different, which you need. Any character that lasts as long as Godzilla and other fictional characters such as Batman, Superman, and other superheroes, they go through major changes from time to time. And, this is one of those changes. The unfortunate thing is that I don't think we're going to see anything like this again. But at the same time, part of me is kind of happy that we probably aren't going to see anything like this again, because that's what makes this particular anime trilogy more unique and more on its own, and something that stands out more. And like I've said before in the past, over the course of this year, I really think as the years go by, over the next 5 to 10 years, I think more of the fandom will end up going back, revisiting this trilogy, and I think they will be a little bit more kind to it, because it is such a special trilogy.
Mm-hmm. So is that it for you?
I have one more section.
Okay. So I'm guessing I'm going.
Yep.
Because my next thing on my list is things to look forward to for next year. And I know I mentioned about G-Fest 27 coming up next summer. That is probably going to be my last G-Fest to go to for the next possibly 1 or 2 years, especially with next year being our 10th anniversary. And I thought, and that was also one of the main reasons why I decided to go to, is that with it being our 10 years of podcasting here online.
What does Godzilla Earth do when his little monster friends come over? Oh, serve them. That's pretty good. I've never heard that. That's a good joke. I like that.
So yeah, that was one of the main reasons why I decided to go to G-Fest 27 for next year, is for our 10th year, and to also sort of make it a little bit special for both of us there, that sort of helps celebrate our 10 years podcasting. But yeah, definitely looking forward to going to that, and especially with Kent possibly bringing his son, which I'm guessing he probably will.
Right
do
now,
that.
if I had to say right now in this very moment, the probability of that happening, I would say it's 70%, but that changes every day depending upon how much he pisses me off.
Which is nothing new. And one of the things I'm definitely looking forward to, I think everyone would also agree, Godzilla vs. Kong. Hopefully, it won't be the last of the MonsterVerse, depending upon how it does, and as well as how good of a story that film is going to be. And I think I'll do pretty well, in my opinion, and prediction wise. I think it's going to do fairly well. And also, with the reason for that being moved, is that I think in that the same month in March is that the live action Mulan was supposed to be coming out in China. So, and they want China to sort of help uh, with the gross for the Godzilla movie. So I think that was one of the reasons why they pushed that back to November next year. But yeah, that's definitely going to be one of the things to look forward to in 2020. And then also, one thing to look forward to is definitely the Ultra Series sets that are coming out by Mill Creek Entertainment. I know with your little spiel there, and despite the fact that there's maybe some people out there like you that are in the minority of not liking the white text, subtitle text.
Yeah, the white subtitles. There are rumors
But
out there that Legendary said they're planning on doing prequels. Yeah, I heard that too. I would actually like to see that, but again, a lot of it depends on us. If we go and support these films, not just in theaters, but also when they come out on home video. Um, so if we want them, if you want them, you better get your butts to the theaters when these films are out.
yep, and spending all that cash that you have.
Yeah, separate the money from yourself.
But yeah, definitely looking forward to all the Ultra Series uh, Blu-ray sets are going to be coming out within the next year. Uh, I'm just really glad that Mill Creek Entertainment has the rights to the entire Subaraya Ultra Series library, and it's so great to finally get the chance to see some of these other Ultraman TV shows that we haven't had the chance to see or been brought to the States here yet. So it's just really great to see those, especially in high quality, um, and and then get some of those booklets with details on monsters, TV shows, and the characters themselves. It's going to be, I would say, it's going to be a really good year being a kaiju fan coming 2020.
It will be. I
And
mean, look, this is something I thought about here a week or two ago. We live arguably in probably the greatest kaiju time period since either the 60s or 70s, and maybe of all time, just because of the fact that there are so many niche, like toy production companies out there now that will produce items that we're looking for. I think there's probably just in general more things for us to buy.
yeah,
The fact too that we for several years now have been seeing not just movies in theaters, but we've been seeing stuff get either released or re-released onto home video. Certain things that people either missed out on, from maybe 10, 15 years ago to brand new stuff as well. So we're living in a huge renaissance. And I realized I haven't taken advantage of that a whole lot, that I've been taking it for granted. And that I think all of us
mm-hmm.
really need to bask in this glory that is the fact that we've had kaiju films. So many people get caught up in this whole online war of, well, this movie was great. No, it sucked and you sucked as well. that we tend to forget. Look, these movies didn't have to be produced, and for a very
Yeah.
long time, these movies were not produced, and um, and so this is something we have to be thankful and grateful for, regardless of what you think of Skull Island, regardless of what you think of Pacific Rim and its sequel, regardless of what you think of the two Godzilla movies, even for me, regardless of what I think about Shin Godzilla and for what other people think about the anime Godzilla, we live in arguably the greatest moment for this genre, because there's been so much that has been released and done. It's amazing to get caught up in the stupid little stuff when we
Right.
completely miss the forest for the trees, and we keep forgetting. Look, remember what happened between like 2005 and like 20 like 13 or whatever. It's like hardly nothing. Like you went virtually almost a whole decade with really nothing outside of the occasional like collectibles or whatever. But otherwise, in
Right.
terms of films, and even in some cases, again, there were some exceptions, but there weren't a whole lot of DVDs and stuff released as well. Again, there are exceptions, but it's like by and large, there was virtually nothing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, definitely. So it's something not to take for granted or anything. So I would say just live in the moment. I mean, it's like we've had at least 5 years worth of really good stuff going on, and it's still continuing on even into next year. Now that the whole trademark lawsuit with Ultraman has finally been settled and everything, so now we're finally gonna get our chances
Ultraman, yeah,
to
helping fans out.
yeah, to finally see all those TV shows that we haven't had the chance to see over here. It's really going to be a good time to be a kaiju and a tokusatsu fan, nonetheless. And then another thing, speaking of Ultraman, another thing to look forward to for me for next year is season 2 of the anime Ultraman coming on to Netflix. Even though I don't have a subscription right now, definitely will have to resubscribe, especially now with two He-Man TV shows going to be coming out
Yeah,
soon. So
thanks Netflix for taking my money.
yeah, definitely. So it would be a good time to finally get around to seeing season 2 of Ultraman when that comes out. I think it comes out in sometime in April next year. So so yeah, definitely looking forward to many of those things for 2020.
Okay. For me, mine is not. Shin Ultraman is going to be great. We talked about that a little bit earlier. I'm not too fond of it, simply
Plus,
because
that's going to
I
be
think,
coming out in 2021.
yeah. But it's mainly because the same group that is working on this crapped on my beloved Godzilla. So I'm not, like I told Jason, again, I'm not sure if you were here for that conversation. I told Jason, I said, I'm not
Yeah.
going to watch it at all unless he comes back to me and says it was good. Then that's the only time I'm going to watch it. Otherwise, I'm ignoring it completely. Um, but for me, my list, I call it hopes for 2020. And with this list, I only have three things on there so far. Um, for me, this is about things that I and or you and I hope maybe we could do over the course of this next year. So it's not so much things I'm looking for, although some of this stuff I am hoping to look forward to, but certain
Hmm.
things that I would like for us to maybe try to do or do more of. One thing would be, for me, anyways, I would like to do more writing on the website.
Hmm.
As I stated earlier when I talked about Godzilla raids again, I'm working on some post ideas um, already. um,
Yeah.
for the site. So right now I'm trying to just get a bunch of ideas together so I have content to kind of keep writing consistently. Um, over a period of time. By the way, I sent you some private messages here on our light stream. Um,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah.
um, um,
Yeah,
and,
whatever.
and I think the last time I wrote anything may have been last year or earlier this year when I did the Super Defo Reel 98 Godzilla toy review. And that was
Yeah.
like March or whenever that was. Um, and so, um, yeah, I'm hoping to do more writing for our website. Including reviews and stuff. I need to go through and find out what movies I haven't reviewed yet, so I can review them. Um, another hope I would like to have for next year is trying to get some guests on the podcast next year, including trying to bring back Zero One Publishing and catching up with them. I know Patrick McAvoy is very disgusted with Facebook right now. And he's been looking to leave, but he just hasn't found another suitable social media home yet. And I haven't seen much of Kat Roker or Josh Finney doing much on Facebook, and I'm wondering how easy it's going to be to try to get in contact with them. I guess there's always their site, I guess, but I would like to have them come on for maybe an episode or two at least. I know with us doing one episode a month now, things are going to get a little bit more hairy in terms of trying to figure out when to do certain things and how to put episodes together because we're not doing as many of them now. So, one of the
Right.
things I think we should think about as we enter into next month is, do we want to maybe do what our super podcasts mainly, like if we're doing a podcast like we're doing now, do we want them to be super long where we talk about a bunch of things all at once? Um, or something like that. Maybe give that a try or something. Um, and if Godzilla Productions, if you want to be a guest, hey, more than willing to chat with you. I'm not sure if this light stream can do more than two people. I don't know, Jason, is that possible or
Yeah, I believe so. I think we can have up, according to the green room, up to 8 people.
up to eight people? Okay, well then we might have to give that a shot. Um, So there's that
Mhm.
possibility. That's something, like I said, you and I have to think about going into next month. And then
Yeah.
the final thing I have on here, and this is a kind of a what if, but maybe having the possibility of once in a great while doing more than one podcast a month,
Mhm.
perhaps. Um, like maybe for example, like we do like a regular episode like this, but then if we do a commentaries are a lot of fun, a little bit simpler to put together than something like this. Do something like that. I know we've been talking about doing more commentaries, and we did there for a little while after coming back from G Fest this year. I would like to do that. I have a movie called Colossal that I bought when it came out on Blu-ray like 2 years ago, whenever that was. I mean, it's been a while. I have not watched
Mhm.
it. I bought it and I have not watched it. I never went and saw the thing in theaters or anything. I've never
I
once
haven't
seen this
either.
movie.
I have not even seen it either.
And I just think, I think that would be like, for example, if you were to buy that, like even in the next few weeks or whatever, that could be something we could do next month. Is that we could have a virgin watching of Colossal, because
Virgin
then
watch.
we'll call it the Daikaiju Network Virgin Watching Commentary of Colossal, um, because I think it would be fun because our reactions are going to be like the first reactions ever because you and I have not seen that film before. So I think it would be a fun thing to do, like, for example, with something like that, or just even in general. Like, we could still do one podcast a month like this, and then still maybe later in the month just do a regular commentary, perhaps.
Mhm.
I don't know. It's kind of up to you because I know you've been talking about doing other projects. I kind of want to do some other things too, but I don't think a
Yeah,
commentary would be that big of a deal in terms of making it work.
yeah. I know I had at least there was one project that I wanted to get into that was in relation to Daikaiji Network was try to dive in more into video content in a way and possibly doing sort of something like what Kyle and some of those others are going to be doing, which, by the way, for those that don't know, Kyle will be premiering his new project today over on YouTube, doing a live stream with a handful of other people. And there's a couple that we've seen over at G Fest, and then a couple others that we haven't seen before. It seems to be pretty promising, and then like what we've said, that congratulations to Kyle on his 10 years of kaiju casts, and hopefully he does fairly hope I would say we wish him luck on his new endeavor there. But other than that, I was gonna do something a little something similar in that, but mainly focusing on maybe like on possibly one or two figurines uh, of the such, and just kind
What
of
do
dive
you
in.
know what his channel name is?
I'm probably guessing it's gonna be collect all monsters TV,
Okay,
because
we'll
I because
try
I
that
know that
Godzilla Productions.
because I know that was his username over on Instagram, and I think that was the name of their website too, collectallmonsterstv.com. I'm not entirely sure, but
Let me do
last
a
I
quick
saw on their
search here.
last I know on their website, it was just like uh, barely anything on there. It just said premiering December 28th with the YouTube uh, play logo on there. I'm not even sure if it'll link just to their YouTube uh, page there.
It's just called, I think, Collect All Monsters. It's just
Okay.
straight up that, Collect All Monsters. And it's going to start 6 p.m. Eastern time at least.
Okay. Yeah. So you're 420 over there. So at least about an hour 40 minutes left Eastern time on his end, on Kent's end, by the way. So we'll probably be done long before that.
Oh,
So
well, I hope so.
because we're getting close to 3 hours and 10 minutes on here already. So like we always say, this uh, our end of year is usually our longest episode for the
Mhm.
entire year. But
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like that was one of my ideas. Try to do something for Daikaiji Network was try to dive into more video content and try to do something similar to that in a way, and then hopefully maybe in the future, whenever I save up money to go to Japan and try to do something over there as well. Maybe talk a little bit about certain areas, maybe non kaiju related, like where to go, like some of my recommendations to go to, or like some of the best places to go to there when you're in Tokyo, or maybe in a few other areas of Japan whenever I go to those areas. Uh, so yeah, that was some of my ideas, and then of course try to write a few things for the website.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, with that, we are ready to wrap up this episode of the Daikaiju Network podcast. And for everybody out there, we thank you so much for listening and tuning in for this episode. Minecraft Dino Kaiju and Godzilla Productions TV, and especially you, Godzilla Productions TV, you have been the most consistent visitor and listener, at least on our YouTube channel and everything. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like and subscribe. Wherever possible. Share this with people if you enjoy it, because in the world of the internet and social media, even if Jason and I poured a ton of money into this thing for marketing and trying to get our name out there, sure, we could get some new viewers and subscribers and all that, but really thing is for all of us to share our content, um,
Hmm.
and to just kind of help us out in that way. We do this for free. We don't make a single dime off of this. We don't even have a merch
Hello.
for us from
You kind of blanked out there. It
and
seems like your
yeah.
it seems like your feed's going out a bit there, freezing up.
Oh, well, you just kind of blanked out on me. This is gonna be funny. But yeah,
At least we're
you
getting
know,
at the end here.
well, yeah, but this is something that Jason and I have thought about off and on over 10 years is, do we want to try to go big time? And usually that means not just spending money like on Facebook, thanks Facebook, for trying to get our name out there and all that, but um it also means spending a bunch of more time doing things with the website, doing things with the podcast in terms of content, trying to figure things out that would be more appealing to people, as well, and to just try to, be creative. And the unfortunate thing for me is that it takes me a long time to be creative. It doesn't come to me as quickly and naturally as it might for some people. And so, this is, we keep kind of going back and forth every year. At least once every year, we're always like, is this something that we want to do? And I think we've reached a point where he and I have basically come to terms with me raising two young kids, and then him with his job and also wanting to work on other projects. And of course, starting next year, too, I want to work on some things too. We just kind of decided, look, this is going to be um, our hobby. This is a hobby. This is really how it has been from day one, and I think this is how it's going to stay for an indefinite period of time until either we just decide to quit podcasting or until we decide to maybe change our minds and put more time and money and effort
Mhm.
into it. But this is a labor of love. We may not be the fanciest podcast out there. We may not, have guests on all the time. What we are is we're two brothers in their mid 30s who have been Godzilla fans
Well,
for like
I'm
27.
I'm in my early 30s still, but sort of getting to it in the middle.
Yeah, but we're just, we've been fans for like 27 years now, and what we do is we like to share our love of kaiju and all things. Sure, we criticize some things here and there, like Shin Godzilla, but one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is I think we are one of the more honest podcasts out there in the kaiju genre, meaning that what you hear from us is not it's not fake. It's not some sort of show or anything like that. Like when I tell you I don't like Shin Godzilla, I do mean I do not like Shin Godzilla. I'm not out there to create, some faux controversy to try to get clicks or anything like that. And we've never done anything like that, anyways, for clickbait or anything like that. When I tell you I love the '98 Godzilla movie, I do mean I love the '98 Godzilla movie. Again, I'm not trying to create controversy. We should make videos that would help more people find you. Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to think about that too. I've
Well,
been
at
going back
least
and
with
forth as far as maybe, and I don't know how I would do it because I don't have a real fancy video camera, but I've thought about doing things like a Twitch. But again, like I said, I don't have a fancy camera or anything like that to really do that. So I'm not sure. My computer camera here is decent. It's not spectacular, but it does okay.
well,
But
and at least with us, with the live streaming here on 4 different platforms, YouTube, Twitch, D Live, and Periscope. At least it's sort of our way of doing video content and not doing pre-recorded stuff like we've been doing for the majority of us being in existence as far as a podcast here, because we started out was it in April of 2018 when we started, because I can still remember our very first live stream episode was Rampage there when we did a review of that just on YouTube itself, and then just gradually brought expanded out into 3 other different live streaming platforms
yeah,
here.
and I've thought about doing things like recordings where I do voice recordings and then I put like a slideshow together and then post it on YouTube. Once again, the problem, at least for me, is that with me raising 2 young kids, my free time is very limited, and a lot of times my free time is spent taking naps because I'm so exhausted. So I don't have a
And
ton of
then
free time.
and then you
Um,
don't necessarily have some of the like right video editing, except for probably
I
Movie
just
Maker,
get
which is very
clips.
very basic.
It is, but if I can find pictures on the internet, that's all I need. Like I could still do what I want just by doing that. So that's not a real bad thing for the most part, but you know, it is what it is, and it would we just need to try to figure something out that's not going to break the budget, and all that. But um, unfortunately got to wrap this up because my kids are going to be getting up from their naps here. But once
Yeah.
again, thank you so much to everybody who's been listening to us over the year. Merry belated Christmas. Hope you all have a happy
Yep.
year. We don't
Um,
have a date set up yet for our next month podcast, but we will let everybody in the know through social media.
Yeah. So, and before we close out, just want to show these again. We got our podcasting networks. We're available on these podcast platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and as well as TuneIn. And then, like I mentioned earlier, on the streaming platforms: YouTube, Twitch, DLive, and Periscope. And you can also like and subscribe to us on these platforms that we're available on: DLive, Facebook, Instagram, Periscope, Telegram, Twitch, Twitter, and as well as YouTube. And then you can also find us over at Daikaijunetwork.com there. So, yeah, this was a very good episode that we've done. And thank you for watching. And hope
Or
to see,
listening.
yeah, and hope to see you all next year.
Yep. Going into our 10th year of podcasting.
All right, take it easy, folks, and have a
Take
happy
care.
new year.
Stay